we remove the DNR policy as a conversation topic. Anything else, board members?
Sorry, where on the agenda is that?
It's in the packet under policies. It was included. It's included in the packet under all of the policy. Correct. So I'm just making the note, the recommendation that we do not talk about that, even though it is in the packet.
So, I have some recommendations on the agenda as well.
Go ahead.
I would like to remove from the agenda, under 3 work session, A, B, and E, as well as talking about future agenda items and announcements. My understanding was this was a work session, so not going to be run like a regular meeting, outside of discussing the bar. And I think that with the budget and strategic plan that we're already looking at 3 hours, and just based on our last conversation, those were the things that I know I personally left the meeting thinking the work session was just going to be about the budget and strategic plan. So I would like to remove those items so we can focus on what we thought we were going to focus on.
Anything else, board members? All right. I will clarify something here. And part of item E on the list and A and B was actually directly from your request about policies and including policies on there.
So can I just clarify that?
Sure.
Because my request for policies was for there to be discussion, not reads. And so that's why I'm asking about the DNR, because that was something we had talked about actually discussing, and it's not on the agenda. I know it's in the packet.
Yes, ma'am.
So I thought we were gonna have discussion about it.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't think we were gonna do first reads of new policy. That's not what we discussed last time.
Understood. So I'll clarify there. So in order to bring policies to the board, even in a work session, it was recommended that those policies be listed, but we say policy services. And this gives us the opportunity to have these policies presented, but for us to be able to discuss them. And again, what we had spoken about in the last one is that you do not have to have a second read immediately, but this is giving us the opportunity with the person who is doing all of these policy services with us to present these, so that if we have questions, if we have discussion, this is the opportunity for that. And that's why that's on there.
So it's gonna be a policy read and discussion
100%.
on all of the policies?
If we would like to discuss, and that's why those were put in the board packet.
So again, that wasn't my understanding. My understanding was we were gonna discuss the DNR policy, strategic plan, and the budget. And that's what this session was gonna focus on. And so if we're doing policy reads on other policies, first reads on other policy, that's not the DNR, that was not my understanding, because then that adds additional time, which I know I didn't plan for. I was planning to be here probably with just those 3 items, right? The budget, strategic plan, and the discussion on the DNR. For like, I'm like, that those are easily an hour discussion each at least. And so if you're saying we're gonna do policy reads on additional policy and have discussion, I think that adds to the time, and that is not something from the last meeting that I left with the understanding or
So to follow up on those comments, again, I took from the session that the last meeting was that we were gonna be talking policy. And again, my understanding about presenting the policy is that when we put policies, we need to have those policies, given to us, that we're not just randomly picking, there's kind of a method to the madness.
So we
And
had a policy read on the DNR last week.
understood, which is why I'm recommending that part, because I did reach out to the board attorney about that and did not get that back. I had anticipated that I would find out, and
Right.
that's why I have that.
I understand.
So
some parts
can I
of that
finish the
communication that we were-
understood? So the reason why the policies were on there was to get us to be able to discuss without it being action, so that we had that time. Also, I put the superintendent evaluation on as a courtesy to the board to present it, knowing that this is something that is going to be happening down the road. This was an opportunity to supply options, because everybody has said that they are not a fan of the current instrument. And so my intention there was literally 2 minutes to be able to say, here are all of these options. Please look at those for your convenience, because it's something in June that's going to need to be coming up. So that's why that was on there.
So can we discuss that at a future working session? Because we just did an email. His email is not due.
Understood, but if you recall in that meeting, it was discussed that a new instrument needs to be in place for him in June. So we don't have to discuss at all. It was simply an opportunity to present. So yes, we certainly can discuss again later, but having a work session and one meeting to take action, this was an opportunity to present so that in the future, we can have a first read and everybody can determine, we looked at all of these options, or there's another option to bring in. And then finally, following up, the reason why E is on there was because the board asked of me what work sessions are, what regular meetings are, what special sessions are, what executive are, and what is allowed in those meetings. And so I followed up with that and wanted to just take a brief minute to express what that was. Again, because as a board of 5, we all are looking at how these meetings are structured. So that's why those are on there. And so board members, anything else? I hear the recommendation to remove A, B, and E. Anything else, other board members? Superintendent Widener, do you have a recommendation, sir?
I recommend that you adopt the agenda as amended.
It has been moved by Monica and seconded by Donalyn to approve. Pardon me, let me rephrase that. My apologies, ladies. It has been moved by Ms. Salazar and seconded by Ms. Lorenzo to approve the agenda as amended, removing A, B, and E. And what else did you want removed?
Future agenda items and announcements, because I think we had all of that last time and we'll have it again in these seats.
So item 6 and 7. All right, I'm going to restate Chanda, sorry, excuse me. It has been moved by Ms. Salazar and seconded by Ms. Lorenzo to approve the agenda as amended, removing items under for work session A, B, and E, and removing item 6 and 7. Board members' discussion.
I would be willing to remove item B, but that would be the only one I would support removing right now is the evaluation instrument.
I think the only thing I have to, excuse me, add to discussion is that the follow-up board meeting structure is important because we're needing to talk about how these meetings are going to be moving forward, and a work session, that's discussed at the end of a meeting doesn't mean that there are only two things on that work session. The superintendent and, the district may have other things to add, which was part of the policy. And yes, I will agree, we do not need to discuss, because it was just going to be presentation about the options for the evaluation instrument. Any other discussion, board members? All right, at this time, typically with adoption of agenda, we have to do roll call. As discussed, you do roll call with adoption of the agenda, consent agenda, executive, and then when you leave the meeting. So Mrs. Turley, roll call, please.
Mr. Clausen?
No.
Mr. O'Neill?
No.
Ms. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Ms. Salazar?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
No, the motion fails. So at this time, we would need to revisit the agenda and reconsider what the amendments are. What I have heard from the board at this time is that removing item B certainly makes sense. I will concur with Donaldin, that we don't have to have future agenda items and announcements for a work session. However, NMSBA and the attorneys, have indicated that when we do agendas, it's supposed to be indicative of, what is in policy, and our policy does state, those items are supposed to be on there, and that's why they're on there. But I understand, needing to remove those. So at this time, board members, what do you have as far as changes to the agenda? And if you have those changes, is there a motion to support those?
What changes would we be supporting now?
So we're indicating that we would like to remove item B and remove future agenda items, which is 6, and announcements.
My question is, when will we know what's coming up? Will it come up once a month? Like I said, I do like it because I like to make sure everything's in there that I have plans for. And we start knocking them off eventually. I mean, that's what I look at. I don't know, like I said, everybody else is new. I've been here for 2 years and this has worked out fine with us, and we kind of just tagged it from the board before us. And I've always liked the future agenda that way, because sometimes I won't have to ask Lane, what about Mesa View? Where are we with Mesa View? Or where are we with food service, whatever? Like right now, the furniture at Mesa View, at least I know, where it's coming up. I mean, whether we read it or not, I mean, I don't mind it being on here. It's just part of my inventory in my brain as to, that way I don't have to be asking, and I already know it's on here. I know it's on here,
Right.
so I don't know where would we get the information of what's coming up the pike? And then we can adjust where it goes, where we can say, well, the STEM camp probably needs to be A, or Avid needs to be A, or you know what I mean? This gives us a chance to juggle in what comes up the pike. I mean, that's how I look at it. I don't know how you guys look at it or how Lane works with it. How do you work with that future? Like I said, that's how I look at it is, you know, maybe this one needs to move up here. The summer program is a future agenda. It's pretty soon. That's coming up. The summer program, collective bargaining agreements, you know, there's just a lot of stuff in here that I need to know. But when, how will I know?
Fair point.
So for a working session, can we see previous agenda and then discuss it in 2 weeks? Cause most of this stuff is on the last, agenda. I mean, there are things on the agenda now that weren't on the future agenda items 2 weeks ago.
Right,
Right.
and future agenda items, just for reference, is keeping everything kind of in the queue. It isn't dictating that that has to be on the next agenda. Like when Mr. Widener says board members are there, so
And I mean, I don't think we go over them verbally, we just look at them. I mean, the only,
we do go over.
well, but we don't discuss about them.
What we do.
I never have. I already know what's going on, so I really don't have much to say when I get here.
So board members,
But-
is there a motion or a recommendation, you know, from you all, what you would like to amend on the agenda?
Like I said, my job is here is to yay or nay, that's it.
But then that would take away, if we discuss it in a working session, we don't bother Wayne on his working days.
I also don't think I'm here to rubber stamp anything, so I'm not just here for a meeting, I'm not discuss.
Well, then
So
we're gonna
let's
discuss
get,
why you're worried about
let's
leaving.
get back,
So
let's
then
get
why you
back to
worried
the
about
agenda.
leaving? Discuss for.
All right,
Where's that?
board members, let's get back to agenda adoption. So, board members, at this time, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended, removing item B and removing future agenda items and announcements?
One second.
All right, it has been moved by Ms. Salazar and seconded by Mr. Clausen to approve the agenda as amended, removing item B and item 6 and 7. So it's item B under 4 work session. Any discussion on that, board members?
It's actually, item 5 and 6. Future agenda item.
Is 6. And announcements are 7. Oh. So I probably have it wrong on mine. 1, 2. Oh, I do. You were correct because I was using a template and I had citizens to address the board in my template. Apologies. So it's 3. Thank you for catching that. 4. So it's item 5, Mrs. Turley, and item 6, Mrs. Turley. Thank you for that. Good catch. All right. Any discussion, board members?
No.
All right, Mrs. Turley, roll call, please, ma'am.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mr. Hadamil,
No.
Ms. Lorenzo,
Yes.
Ms. Salazar, Ms. Lee.
Aye, motion carries. Work session, policy services. Mr. Widener.
Ms. Garcia Ortiz is here tonight. Gallegos Ortiz is here tonight and is going to be talking to us about policy reads. So. Ms. Gallegos Ortiz, I apologize that I.
No, sure, you should have the ability to. Yeah, he's confirmed that you have permissions.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight we'll be doing a first read on Policy Services Advisory, Volume 26, Number 1 from April of 2026. Policy G1350, GBGC, Employee Assistance. The most significant change is tightening when the district can require a medical exam. Previously, it was based on a subjective opinion, and that language has been removed. Now the district must have objective evidence and meet legal standards. The provider definition is expanded to allow more flexibility. Confidentiality requirements are strengthened, which is critical for compliance. And the advisory emphasizes that this area carries high legal risk and legal counsel should be consulted when needed. And then for policy, do you want me to do both of them or this one first and then talk about it and go on to the second one, or how would you like to do it?
Board members, what is your opinion on that? Would you like to discuss these, ask any questions you have as each policy is brought up? Or do you want to discuss and save questions for the end? It's your discretion.
So I guess that was my question. If we're doing policy reads the way we've normally done policy reads, we're doing them and then not having discussion. So that's what I was
That's
trying
what
to
the,
clarify. So,
right,
so
so,
if we're going to do policy reads, I did not bring my list of questions on them because we haven't done discussions with policy reads.
correct, but that was the purpose of this falling under a work session to allow us the opportunity for it. Because this is the work session, not the regular meeting. So this would be the opportunity to be able to
This is
discuss.
a regular meeting in my opinion.
Technically, most board meetings are looked at as a regular meeting. Under what law for the Open Meetings Act states, as well as what policy states. So my advisement from Joe Guillen, who's the head of the New Mexico School Boards, is that a meeting is a meeting of the board, no matter what you call it. And again, we can discuss that under item E. But this is the opportunity for us to ask questions and discuss what we feel the strengths, weaknesses, or all of the above are or are not. And that's also why it's been in the packet since Friday.
Why don't we just read through them, and then if anybody has anything, it's time. We'll go through it. The first read, we're gonna have another read.
Sure.
We gotta do something. We've already filled 30 minutes.
Makes sense.
We'll continue.
I believe that's the consensus is go ahead on. Thank you, ma'am.
So for policy K1000 KDB, public right to know, and K1031 KDBE, public right to know exhibit, this policy has been updated to fully align with the Inspection of Public Records Act, IPRA. A key change is shifting responsibility to a records custodian rather than the superintendent alone. Timelines are now clearly defined and legally aligned. The biggest operational change is the fee structure. Districts can only charge actual costs, not staff time. There is also a new requirement to post public notice to the district website. And overall, these changes increase transparency and reduce risk of non-compliance. Also with this one, you all were provided tonight with, the exhibit that has our this information on top. This is the exhibit I would like for you guys to look at and discuss instead of the one that it basically has the same information. The only difference is that Ms. Turley's information is on this so that there's more so that they know where
Correct
it needs to be
contact.
sent to. Yes.
That makes sense.
Are there any questions on this advisory?
Is there like a, database that you all keep track of record requests?
All of our IPA requests are
Are-
tracked, yes.
Okay.
So this exhibit just replaces the
The one that's
one
in
that's right there.
Yes.
I don't have any questions on that.
I need a.
And if the parent doesn't agree to this,
If a parent doesn't agree to what?
to, having their file shared.
Or-
If
For
it's like
a-
an outside entity wants to see the records.
So we don't share, that's not public information.
This is just,
For
for a
the
request for public.
versus
records.
IPRA. Maybe you could just go over for the.
If it's already public, they can request, if it's public records, they can request to have.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times we get
No.
records requests where they wanna know how many level 2 teachers we have in the district, or what our salary schedules are,
Where we buy paper from.
you know.
That one today for that.
Seriously.
Seriously?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just anything that's public that as a school district, public records.
Not student records.
Okay.
That even includes emails.
Yeah.
Emails.
Phone records, emails. Yep.
They're good on that one.
If I-
All I have for tonight, if we're not doing the DNR, it was just those two.
I just don't think it's worth doing the DNR without advice from legal
Yeah,
counsel.
we need. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
At this time, next, we have the budget, which is a big important part of your job as the Board of Education. You guys hire a superintendent and you approve a budget. So Mr. Jones has been working very diligently with the numbers that he's received from the Public Education Department. And so he's going to give you the presentation with the breakdown of the budget. I believe you all have had drive access to the budget building since April 1st. And so I'm hoping Mr. Jones can clarify all of that for you.
Absolutely. Madam President, members of the board, thank you for being here. I've asked both Mr. Chavez to help fill in the gaps where I might leave places, is also with Mr. Widener as your employee to kind of help explain some of these things. So I want this to be really transparent. It can be very conversational. If you have questions, stop me. My hypothesis is that by the end of this, you know way too much about our budget and the budget process. I've kind of left no stone unturned. This year is different than last. And we're kind of in a position that I would assume 50% of school districts in the state are in. So this presentation is also in your drive so that you're able to access this and everything else that I've worked in. So just really quick, in terms of this presentation, I really just want to talk about the objectives, the timeline, what PED is looking for. Number 4 is kind of just my lens and trying to explain how school budgets work. 5 is our budget breakdown into the buckets is kind of the way that's explained. And then number 6 being the path forward following this meeting. So things we need to accomplish tonight. We need to understand the timeline that PED has given us. We need to understand what PED is asking for us and the role that each of us play. We need to understand how the budget's created. And also, ideally, we understand the need for a preliminary or draft approval of the budget. And I'll get into that a little bit more just a couple slides from here. So this is the normal timeline that PED has established for budgets. So statutorily, all budgets are due on April 15th. Where there's close to 100 districts in the state, the Secretary of Education allows for budgets to be due in weeks following April 15th. So our budget was due on April 27th to PED. There are other budgets that are due the last week in June. It's kind of just luck of the draw. They use kind of last year as a metric for where they place us and when they place us. So the normal timeline is we get the unit value that happens at the spring budget workshop that ASBO puts on. Then they distribute the SEG amount, which is the 910B5, which you have in the drive as well. We submit the budget and PED looks at our checklist to make sure that everything's done. Once everything's done, PED grants us budget authority. So you'll notice that a normal timeline and our timeline for this year are not the same. So this year they released the unit value at ASBO. They distributed the SEG amount in the 910B5. We got that on Thursday, April 23rd, which is a business day before our budget was due. So my team and I got to work that weekend and get everything submitted to PED to make sure that we are compliant. So this number 3 is really how this is different from other years. We need to approve a preliminary or a draft budget to PED so that they can see that we're making progress. We will submit an additional final budget after we accept our audit. The reason for this is because without an audit, we don't know what our cash balance is, which your carryover cash is a source of revenue. So for us to submit a budget now, it's lopsided because we don't know how much cash we're taking with us to the next year. So this is somewhat atypical. Last year, our budget was due towards the end of May. We didn't get that submitted until mid-June. Because of that, we're kind of getting to play the accelerated, you need to have this to us as soon as possible because we didn't have it as soon as possible last year. Our district is medium-sized. We have a lot of funds and there's a lot for PED to sort through. So I will show you the budgets. You've got to think that even when we budget and we budget out of the 11,000, which is the SEG, there's going to be a different line item for every school site and every department and all of those breakdowns. They go through that with a fine tooth comb and make sure that we're accurate. So that's why we're doing this and then later we'll do another approval. So this is the whole checklist. This is what PED looks at. The checklist is in your drive as well. They don't ask for anything more than this. They don't ask for anything less than this. This is exactly what they ask for every year when we submit a budget. Same stuff that they asked for last year, same stuff that they asked for the year before. I'm going to go through each one of them and just kind of explain what each one is. So the 901B10 is the final budget approval form that is signed by the superintendent, the board, and myself. That's saying we accept the SEG amount and we've approved on how we're going to spend those funds, which is the buckets. This is like the finish line. Article 10A.
Can I ask a question really quickly? So on the finish line, like, is this, I guess I didn't really understand it much when I was looking at the 901B10 form. So when you're saying the finish line, is that like what was expended or what was?
No,
what
so
do you mean
the-
by finish?
So the 901B10 is a form that says we accept the amount in the 910B5. It has been presented to us in a public board meeting. We have taken action to approve. It's us telling PED that we're going to accept and expend their money.
Okay.
So it's actually like, we take action and approve the budget in June. After that meeting, we all sit around this table and we all sign it saying, yes, we're done. So the 901B10, this will be the last thing that we do. It's kind of just the goal that we're working towards.
So is this for this current fiscal year or the upcoming,
26, 27.
oh, the upcoming fiscal year? Okay, okay.
And the
thank you.
910B5 line items, everything where we're supposed to spend according to the allocations by the state.
Okay,
Perfect. So Article 10A, that verifies that the school district isn't asking for waivers to operate past the allowable maximums for classroom sizes. And I have a slide further on that talks about those classroom sizes. The school district does not operate under any waivers. All of our classroom sizes are below the state maximums.
If I can just add, this is an important piece because of the new accreditation process. If we are in excess of the maximums, then we're in jeopardy of losing our accreditation. So we're in compliance.
So the Article 8 is the certification that Superintendent Widener makes that we've engaged stakeholders in the creation of the budget. We met face-to-face with our budget analyst. We do every year during ASBO. The stakeholder survey is really the best practice that they use. A good example of this is we had public meetings as well. The most popular public meeting that I presented the budget at, we had 15 people that showed up. You have 600 people that do the survey. So last year we did a handful of in-person pop-up budget presentations. I had 3 people, I think, across the whole district. People are busy and it's easier to get to them virtually than it is in person. So that's really how we engage our stakeholders. We also, as part of approving the Title VI expenditure, have a budget for a meeting in conjunction with IPAC, which occurred last week, Wednesday.
is that the public meeting we were talking about?
That is one of the public meetings that we have, and that is the most attended, usually because we have all of our Title VI liaisons there, and then we have parents of Native American students that attend as well. And honestly, like, I wish that we could feed people at these things because it's just, I mean, we had a year where I did a presentation to one person, you know, so you spend your time and 30 slides and you explain all of this, and really what they want to talk about is they don't love the food, you know?
Well, we've been doing them at different places, though. Didn't we do it at Cubero last year or Laguna?
Correct.
Hey, may I get you recording to that?
Yes, I meant to send that to you today.
Yep. So one thing that's really important that Mr. Chavez just brought up, when you audit a school district, you're always auditing a year behind. And it really kind of closes the books on that year. So where we're waiting on the audit, our books are still open. Once we close the books, that allows us to project revenue for the upcoming year. So it's kind of an interesting thing because even the audit that we're participating in right now isn't for the school year that we're in, it's for last year. So they audit our cash, give us that. So even with that, you're always a year behind. Okay, so salary assurances, the state made a mandate that there was a 1% average given to all employees. increase in salary. So in order to verify that, we sign a form that says, yes, we did that. They also look at all of our salary schedules. Salary schedules are also available to you in the drive. We did something that was really good for our people. We have had a difficult time recruiting and retaining anybody, especially teachers being in education. And not just because she's my mother, Mrs. Jones has done a fantastic job recruiting, where looking into next year, I think that we have one position to hire for. Which means that we also have 0 long-term subs. This year, we started the year with 7. The year before that, we started with 37. So our expense for substitutes is really coming down, and we're hiring quality people that want to come and work here. A lot of this, and it's unfortunate, you just gotta pay people to come to grants. You've gotta pay them well to stay here. So what we did for our people is every district employee is going to make $1,000 more next year than they made this year.
Awesome,
So we exceeded the 1% by a good amount.
awesome.
I'll show you kind of the trade-off with that we are incurring. I want our people to work here, and I want them to work here for a long time. Correct. So another big thing that just happened is PED changed the way that they will fund the split with insurance. So all employees in our school district making $50,000 and above, 80% of their benefits are now paid by the state, which is huge. I mean, a family plan with Blue Cross is probably something like $560 a paycheck. So for somebody to take home half of that amount each paycheck is a big deal. So our people are going to be really happy because their benefit expense is coming down while their salary is going up. So
I have another question in regards to that and salary and staff salary. Do we know, like, if staff do leave, are there like exit interviews, or is salaries ever a thing that come up on that?
So thank you for the question. I'm finding, as I've stepped into this role, that there are a lot of missing pieces. And so our department is working very hard to make sure that we are being responsive to people, and we want to know those things. So we're revamping, we're going back to the exit interviews like we've done. We schedule those exit interviews. Generally, we just want to make sure that people understand like that when their benefits end and when they're gonna get their last paycheck and what that last paycheck is gonna consist of. We've talked in our department about adding that kind of questionnaire thing of like, hey, why are you leaving our district? What are the reasons, or how can we be better? Because we do want to be responsive when we have good people in our community that are here. I want to keep those people. I want to help those people any way that we can to make sure that we're keeping, because I've told Mr. Widener multiple times, grants is not necessarily a destination. Like if you're here and you're from here and you want to be here and your family's here, this is where you are and it's a great place. But if other people come here, a lot of times it's to get a little bit of experience or to repay student loans or whatever, and then they're off. So we are working together to get a little exit interview questionnaire together so that we have a better idea of why people are leaving. But I think like with the salaries, the question in regards to salaries, the way that like offering $1,000 to everybody, that's being super responsive to our lowest paid employees, which are getting like a 3% raise versus the higher paid employees. So we're really trying to help offset some of those higher costs that people are incurring right now. In addition to that, like people, it's been a strange year. Like people have reached out like, hey, we're relocating to New Mexico. We have like North Carolina, Missouri and Tennessee, like strange. And so when I have conversations with them, I'm like, well, depending on the license level, if you're this license, this is a salary. And they're like, oh, and I was like, is that like a good oh? And they're like, you are way outpaying what I'm making in Tennessee. So I think that our salaries are fairly strong. And I know Mr. Chavez can speak to that as far as like being in a different district. I think that we're doing a really good job compensating our people adequately compared to some of the other districts that we're in. But yes, the short answer is yes, we're working on a survey where they can kind of give us the reasons that they're leaving so we can be responsive to that.
Yeah. Well, and in my experience, it's usually not salaries, right? If people leave. So my other question is on, I was a little confused in the drive, there's the, and you may get to this, the unemployment rates, but then it has like a budgeted amount. So like, for grants, Cibola County, for grants municipal schools, it says 3. I'm gonna assume that's million.
It's not,
It's
so.
not?
This is kind of the hazard that we run with me being like, here's everything. So the English language learners, the at-risk, the unemployment, those are all equations that feed into the 910B5. Those are how they can calculate how many units we have. So if you have an English language learner, their unit is 1.3 versus somebody that speaks English fluently is just 1. So we get additional funding based on the number of English language learners that we have. We get additional funding based on district demographics and those sorts of things. So
So it's 3,000 additional?
it's 3/10 of a unit. So
Oh,
if we get
okay. I would've
$7,000 per
As much homework
unit.
as I tried to do, I would have never figured.
A lot of
that out.
algebra.
Yeah.
It is.
That's why I went into social work.
That's how they get that SCG too. They just throw all these formulas in there and.
Really driver within the 910B5, and it's what used to be called the TCI or the T&E index.
Teacher cost.
Yeah, the higher of a degreed individual, like a level 3, could be a PhD. The more of units you'll start to develop, which increase your multiplier. So level 1 costs less, so your multiplier is going to be lower. So that's why we report through HR, the levels of teachers, the experience, the degrees, because the higher degreed and the more level 3, the multiplier gets higher.
So we keep good people for a long time and they have the years and they have the degrees and we, they advance through them, then we get compensated for that.
Correct. And we do pay higher than the state average. And we allow for out of district experience. There are some districts that don't. So you could be a teacher for 30 years in Arizona and come to New Mexico. And if you land in the wrong district, you start at step 1. We pay for those years of experience that are verified.
And within the salary tables, it's common practice across the state for every step that you advance for $1 increment. We're here at its minimum of $50, if I remember
That
correctly.
was one of the other things we did this year is made a bigger differentiation between the steps because and there's been past years where it's been like a penny. Like if you're a first year teacher, you made $37,000. If you're a second year, you made $37,000 and 1 penny. Like there's just been, so we've tried to be a little more responsive to that. So there's a little more differentiation between that experience. Not a ton, but enough that more than a penny and more than $1. So that.
Perfect. Okay, so this is more of like what my team and I do. So the board approved a calendar. The calendar has to align with the budget as well because it verifies that we're servicing enough instructional hours, enough professional development hours and all that. So our budget analyst reviews our calendar as well to make sure that we're totally compliant. The bond indebtedness, that's the money that we go to voters for capital money. We have to budget for what we're going to spend on those interest and principal payments for the next year as well. The ed plan's a PED compliance tool that verifies that the school district is providing tiered support, providing social and emotional learning, they're providing services to English language learners. That's really how they verify that we are doing what we say that we're doing. The ed plan really lives in instruction. There's probably an entire session of board work just getting into the ed plan. It's really basic. It's very, very to the point. It's not written like a strategic plan that is more like forward looking and these are all the amazing things that we're doing. It's very much like at Cabero Elementary School, we are providing Laguna and Acoma Cares, period. And then the last thing is we upload everything that I will show you with the numbers. We upload all of that into OBMS as well. OBMS is operating budget management software. The revenues and expenditures, that's how they tell also that we're being responsive to our needs by paying salaries and all of those sorts of things. So ultimately it needs to balance. I'll show you why it doesn't in just a second. So this is me, this is me as an accounting student being a super nerd. When you take your first accounting class, they call this the law of accounting. And it's that your assets on your balance sheet equal your liabilities plus your equity. So that's really difficult to do with the school district because we really don't have assets. We really don't have equity. We have some liabilities just through like our bond indebtedness and things like that. Really what we have is revenues and expenses. So the way that PED is looking at our budget is making sure that our revenues match our expenses. And there's two real reasons why they do this. One, if your revenues were in excess of your expense, then the district ends up hoarding cash, and then we're not spending it for student achievement. They want every dollar that they give us to be assigned to an expense. The opposite is kind of true. We don't want to have expenses in excess of revenue, because if so, eventually we run out of money, which is not good, because then we're also not servicing students for student achievement. So here are our revenue sources that the district is getting consistently. So the first being the state equalization guarantee. It is the primary funding source for New Mexico Public Schools. That revenue on the state is generated from oil and gas production. So SEG should be really healthy next year because the cost of domestic gas has skyrocketed because of conflict in the Middle East. We get interest on our accounts. We have cash accounts that we're getting interest paid on. We also have an investment account that we get interest. It's nothing crazy. We get government rates. Usually we're a couple of basis points below what the Fed funds rate is. So usually somewhere between 2.5% to 3% is what we're getting on interest, which, I mean, it's not something that we're relying on long-term, because in an environment where interest rates are zero, we don't get anything. And then carryover cash. And that's the piece that's really important to understand, that we're lacking right now because we don't have an audit closing the books on the year previous. The carryover cash plays into our revenue. It's something that we can assign expenses to, which right now that we can't. So here are our expenditures. If you'll notice, the expenditures are way bigger than the revenue sources. There's more money that we can spend on than what we're getting. So salaries have gone up. Health insurance, dental insurance, vision, all going up. Operations and services. Utilities are going up like crazy. So your electric bill probably went up somewhere between 8 to 10% in the last year. If it does that again next year, that means that we are spending 10% more on just electric. I would imagine that natural gas goes up. I would imagine that the diesel that we put in our buses next year, that expense is going to be higher than it is this year. All of these things we have to take into account when we're budgeting. There's a reason why the central office and boardroom is in the old science building at Grants High School. We are not flush with cash where we can just go and build a building. Our primary function is really high quality instruction. So we also have some contract services, HVAC providers, the printers, speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. And then we have just like the little buckets where athletics, supplies, instructional materials, technology, your laptops, they come at a cost, right? Our internet connectivity comes at a cost. The chairs that we're sitting in come at a cost. This is our budget. So now we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty. This is the SEG amount that's on the 910B5, which is in the packet as well. There's a very straightforward equation. The way that they get to the equation is complex. Just talking about how different units are weighted and how you accomplish that, that whole form feeds into each other and it gives you that total amount. So if you're curious what we're making for English language learners, you can go and look on that and see how that works. So this is the strategic plan in the budget, and there's a topic on the agenda for the strategic plan, so I won't get too far into it. It's somewhat difficult to say this year's budget is totally fulfilling all 4 or 5 goals of the strategic plan. A strategic plan is usually somewhere between 4 to 6 years. Our district strategic plan is a 5-year plan. So if you have a 5-year plan, which you can only spend for a year, which of those goals do you target, right? Like, I think that the strategic plan is one of many tools that helps us align with how we spend. So the way that I like to look at this is as somebody that was blue collar at one point and loved to build homes, you don't go roof a house that's not standing, right? So really where we're moving towards adopting a new strategic plan, we're really at like groundwork. And then once we get the groundwork done, we pour the foundation. And then once the foundation's up, we frame the house. And then once we frame the house, we come with the HVAC and the plumbing and the electrical and all of those things. So the other thing that's really difficult about the budget is that the state has crazy turnover with the Secretary of Education. So initiatives are changing all the time. So there's a few really good examples. One example is last year, the state gave us $700,000 for instructional materials, which for a district of this size is good. It was adequate. They cut that by $200,000 this year. So they reduce our budget, but the cost of instructional materials has gone up. So that puts us in a position where the state has never fully funded a single initiative. Another example is next year, our kitchens, by state law, have to cook 50% from scratch. Do you know how much more money we're getting to do that? None. So we have to spend in those areas when those things are hot topics. And what's difficult is we do so to be compliant, and we do so because that's what we need to do. Half of the time, a year from now, they might say, man, that 50% from scratch thing was a waste. We shouldn't have done that. We've already expended that money. So the goalposts change in the construction world. The change orders will come. You build this beautiful plan and this beautiful house, and then your wife walks through and says, man, the bathtub needs to be over there. And you're like, oh, so you know what you do? You move the bathtub because that's what needs to happen. Yeah, please.
And on the strategic plan, it should guide the budget, shouldn't drive the budget. It should be one of many tools that we use to build the budget because we need to stay flexible. Strategic plans are aspirational, what we would love and what we want, but actually the feedback we get from you guys and from our stakeholders, community members tell us what they need current day. So that budget needs to be flexible, but you'll also see when you talk about the strategic plan as a guide to the budget, there's not a lot of flexibility and wiggle room to provide that type of funding to meet the strategic plan or community needs. Because you'll see shortly, 85% of our SEG is on salaries and benefits. So if you think about it that way, you have a 15% buffer, if you want to call it that, to meet the other needs of strategic plans, district initiatives, could be school and safety, right? But again, you'll see as you go into it, the 910B fund is an audit tool for the state as well to make sure we're paying teachers appropriately, making sure we're spending in the correct buckets. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room for us to say we have an extra $10 million to do X, Y, and Z when the state's telling us you must be compliant with our expectations first. And whatever you have in excess, you can use towards your strategic plan or district initiatives.
I have a question, Mr. Wagner, around that, because I agree. I think the strategic plan guides the budget, right? And the budget reflects our values, right? Show me your budget, I'll show you your values. And our values are built into the strategic plan. So I didn't see anywhere that I looked, and it's possible I was looking in the wrong place, but where does it say that the strategic plan has to be 5 years?
I'm not sure that, I mean, ours has always been since we've had one. And and interestingly, we're education, right? So our number one priority always has to be academics and educating the kids. And so you'll see when you look at our budget, so much of ours is on salaries and benefits for our employees. And so we've got the teachers there to educate the kids and make sure that we're reaching towards that academic goal. And it's so, I mean, right there, you've kind of got half of a strategic plan already, right? And so it we'll get into that conversation in a little bit, but there,
So we don't, it's not tied to anything like a 5-year strategic plan isn't tied to. like,
I don't think there's a
policy.
standard. I think as long as GCCS has had one, it's been a 5-year plan.
Cause I also think that, right, having a 5-year, I've never been familiar with a 5-year
Uh-huh.
strategic plan. I think strategic plans are, living documents. And so especially at the state level, when there is so much turnover, in administration, and there could be turnover within 5 years at the local
Right.
level too, right? And so I was just wondering if it was tied to anything specific that we feel we have to have a 5-year instead of something more reasonable. So we're also checking up on it on regular intervals. And we can change it if need be, but
Yeah.
I think it's like 5 years is a long time to say this is what we're gonna do for the next 5 years, right?
Well, and the key is that you have realistic goals,
Right.
right? So yesterday in our pre-consultation meeting, we were talking about, well, did we meet the goals of that
Mhm.
5-year plan? No, we didn't.
Right.
And so our goals were up here, we need to have very realistic goals.
Right.
Raise the expectations, but have realistic goals.
And if we're not, if there's conversation happening like
Mhm.
in between then, so we can
Correct.
adjust and modify it, like I call it PDCA, plan, do, check and adjust, but that we have those discussions regularly, especially if we're supposed to tie, our budget's supposed to tie into a strategic.
Well, I think the superintendent made a good point. If it is a living document
Mm-hmm.
and you check off one of those items that was initially on your strategic plan, being flexible enough to add something
Yeah,
else and
that's what
say,
I
we need to allocate budget to address this need. I think what I've seen is 4, 5, or 6 years. It has a strategic plan. I don't think a common practice. I think it's really based on the cohort when they reach their freshman year, because one of the key items is always graduation rates.
Mhm.
And you can't track graduation rates unless it's a 4-year or 5-year, even a 6-year cohort. So I think that might be the common practice. I haven't seen anything in policy. I think it's based on the district
Well,
and the.
I did ask Guy about that, cause Guy and them were here before Francine, and I asked him, well, how did you guys come up with that? Or for, just exactly the question you asked, Donna Lynn, was, how do you come up with 5 years or 4 years? And he said the same thing you said, that they're going by the cohort that starts in 9th grade, and you wanna see if they're actually preparing to graduate, if we're actually getting there. But at the same time, we're looking at 3rd graders, cause I think there's a cohort down there too. So I'd like to look at 3 sounds good, like he said, 3 years is a reasonable one. Cause I was looking at ours, and I don't even think we backtracked to say, well, did we actually gain 13% in reading, or did we actually gain 8%? I can't even remember. They were really up big numbers that they had, like Lane said, they were too high to reach. But like you said, if we do a year at a time or 2, we'll know, hey, we need to adjust our reading, or look, we barely hit 5%, or we increased by 5. I did talk to Guy how they came up with that, because I didn't know about it. I still have it. The guy said that they go by the cohort, exactly what you said, the cohort, or in 3rd grade, from 3rd grade up is how they looked at it.
Cause I also think maybe like, we just approved your contract for 3 years, right? And looking at, cause I think 3 years is reasonable. It makes sense to me in terms of like a graduation cohort, but we're not just like our strategic plan isn't just based on a graduating cohort, right? Like we're looking at all
Right.
students in the
The
district.
guys on the bottom, the 3rd,
And it probably not a bad idea to have it tied to your superintendent. So, then
They
then
get-
in 2029, okay, we need to look at our strategic plan. Did Mr. Widener get us there?
Right. Well, you get to 3rd grade, then you're looking at them from 3rd grade to 6th. Then it's like, then you have 7th, 8th, and 9th. We used to have, like I said, I remember junior high had 3. And then, like I said, it goes from 3rd to 6th. And then supposedly you should be watching them from 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then the other three are 10th, 11th, and 12th. They go in threes. I mean, we sat and
Well,
discussed
no.
at one time.
Eighth grade levels is when you start the state testing, so you can start
Right.
looking at data.
And that's what he was saying, that's how the strategic plan is based by looking at numbers like that, cause I told him, when we came in, we never looked and said, hey, did we meet our goals last year? We never looked at that.
And that would be a good conversation to have in a work session. And, you know, really look at and say, okay, did we increase the math scores?
Yeah, right.
You
You
know,
know, and they're in sixth grade now.
Yeah.
From third.
Yeah, there's not any laws
How's
or
our graduation
regulations saying,
Yeah.
like, they're all generally 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, no, but he was saying three, you know, he said the
Right.
cohorts.
4 to 6, I think, is
Yeah,
what I've
Murphy's
heard
on a
the
5, Rio
standard,
Rancho's on a
you know,
3.
4 being the shortest, just
To
that
the 9.
cohort.
Perfect, I'll proceed.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the tangents. So stakeholder involvement, one thing that's important to recognize that when we do the survey and we hear from stakeholders, everyone has an equal voice. So students have the same voice as parents, parents have the same voice as community members. That means that Mrs. Lee, that's a parent, her voice counts just as much as my sister, Mrs. Jones, that has students in the district. She's a parent. Stakeholders aren't always right. And I'll say that on the record. So if a stakeholder said, you guys are spending too much on electricity, I totally agree. I would love to spend less on electricity, but I can't not pay for electricity. So there are some things that they're just like unfortunate circumstances. We have to pay utilities. You know, when there's a snow, we have to pay our janitors to shovel the snow. You know, those things happen. So the last thing that I'll say just on this slide is that building a budget is not totally scientific. It is not an equation that you can replicate every year. It's something that breathes and changes and moves because initiatives change. One thing that happens often is we'll have a position posted, not often anymore, but say we have a custodian position that we're trying to interview for, and we just don't have any applicants, so that we put a sub there. And subs aren't paid out of that same line item. Subs are actually paid out of contract services. So eventually we get to the spot where we say, man, we've got this money sitting here that we're wasting. Let's move it over to this other place so that we can pay for that position. So those things happen all the time. I'll also say that with the strategic plan and initiatives, not everything has a dollar attached to it. So food service was the #1 response in terms of you need to do better. Switching food service providers doesn't cost us anymore. Everything's claims based anyways. In fact, we could probably generate a little bit more revenue if we had a better provider, because then more kids eat. You do more claims, you get more food. The other thing that I noted was campus culture. Like campus culture with a strong leader costs us nothing. And it's kind of this unfortunate thing. And I'm not throwing stones at any of our administrators or teachers, but 2 level 3 teachers, one of them is going to be more effective than the other, and they're paid the same. You know, so that's something that's like tangible that you can feel. You walk into a classroom and you know that that teacher is a master, and it's the Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so show, and they're engaging students, and it's fantastic. That costs us no more than it does to have a teacher that says, all right, it's in the Google Classroom, take care of it. You know, so and you can feel that if you've been on our campuses. This is our projections by site. So this is what we submit to PED so that they will give us the SEG amount in the 910B5. So all of the blue highlights, which are in kindergarten and 8th grade and 7th grade at Lambs and Laguna Acoma Middle School, it's not a perfect science there as well, because we don't necessarily know how many 5-year-olds are in the community that are going to enroll in kindergarten. So we try to be really conservative. So everything also feeds up. So currently at Blue Water Elementary School, there's 7 kindergartners. We assume that those 7 kindergartners will become 7 first graders. We don't know how many 5-year-olds that live in Blue Water are going to come to school. So those numbers aren't necessarily perfect. That number down in the bottom right corner, that's really what they look at, especially at the 40th day. So they take a snapshot at the 40th day, and then they take an average between the 80th and the 120th, and that's how they project how much they're going to pay us for the next year. So please.
I wanted to just note, the district's done a great job of really being realistic in the numbers. As we all know, birth rates are declining and enrollment across the state's declining. So if you overproject, you run the risk of having to pay the state back.
Which we never wanna do. We would rather underproject.
Yes, correct.
Yep, so. we
Mr.
would-
Mr. Jones is very conservative in his counts. And I appreciate that, cause
Go ahead.
I've been in the district now for 9 years, and we see a surge of kids at the beginning of the year. And then by Christmas, we see it go down, and then we, resurge at the beginning of the new year, and so it's hard to know. And, as we've lost some industry in our communities and some of that, we've had families move away. And so, I think it's very good that we have a very frugal, conservative count.
And back to the 5-year-olds, I was watching TV this morning and they're fighting over that daycare stuff. Well, they were saying that some of these daycares are actually doing 5-year-old programs. They're getting the kids and bringing them in their houses and they're doing what we do with our kids. And they're paying them on top of that. So that could hurt us too.
For sure. There are other ways to retain. One of the things that we're doing is really finding a viable option for students that have discipline that maybe shouldn't be in a traditional learning setting, that we're still allowing them to be around restorative practices, those sorts of things. So our discipline handbook's really firm so that we're not expelling kids for like the slightest thing, which keeps your enrollment up. I know that we're not doing that for the enrollment. It is a byproduct of strong discipline policies, which Larry's spearheaded and kind of revamped that as well. We've long-term suspended less kids this year than we did last year.
And it's our job is to educate every kid, right? Every student in this community, in this county. And so those kids aren't going away. Their families still live here, so we need to come up with options for education and for those families.
I think they've done a good job because having an online option, you keep them within the district. There are online options locally in the state and nationally, that if they want that online option, we lose the enrollment, we lose the revenue. So having them, so they're still a GCCS student and they're still generating revenue for us. Because the more we lose, we lost, you said 200 from last year to this year, you're really looking at 1.2, 1.5 million.
Which is difficult because if you look at, and I have a slide talking about classroom size, for say 200 of those kids were kindergartners, that means that we should really have 10 less teachers. So it makes it difficult to staff those positions when we have declining enrollment, especially when it's so vast. And again, those 200 kids are close by.
So my next question is, so we get our numbers at the beginning of the year, or you project, like Lane was saying, do we project for those ones that come from Mississippi or like you said, Tennessee, where we get another 10 kids that weren't in our numbers? Do we have that wiggle room for them too, or we just gotta?
We don't. There is a little flexibility. So when I was hired into this position, our projection by my predecessor was like 3,500, and we had 3,200 students at the time. So I called PD and said, I can't have this happen because I'm gonna owe you $3 or $4 million by the end of the year. And they said, oh yeah, we totally understand this happens. So there is the ability to adjust. Really from now until next year when we do our projections, it's fixed. So
But has it happened?
So it hasn't. And like a good example of this, like a super opportunistic or optimistic person would say that, and not to make a statement on it being the best thing or the worst thing, but say uranium industry comes to Cibola County and we get 300 students on a year that we only projected, to keep low. So now we have a district of 3,200 and we've only got a budget for 3,000. We have to fill in those gaps as well. So that's probably more rare but there is adjustments like ad hoc throughout this.
Yeah.
So they make a mid-year adjustment to your SEG.
And that would be awesome if we got 300 extra kids.
Yeah, and it's important to carry a healthy cash balance because until that mid-year adjustment, you need that cash balance for being conservative to be able to staff or provide structural materials for those students that we wanted to count.
Okay, so this is, and I'm really walking you through how we place people in positions. So we look at our enrollments and then we look at the classroom size maximums. An FTE is a full-time equivalent. So that is the cost of a teacher for salaries and benefits. So in pre-K, it's a 4-to-1, and the 3Y. In the 4Y, it's a 10-to-1. Kindergarten, 14 max. You can get up to 20 if you have an EA. In first through third, the average is 22. In first grade, if you have above 21, you need an EA. 4th through 6 is 24. And then you get to the secondary, the middle school maximum, and this is for English teachers specifically, which are on the lowest threshold. They can only see 135 students a day, and at the high school, they can see 150 students a day. With that said, there's not a teacher in our district in the secondary level that's teaching more than 125 students a day. We're far below the minimums there. This year, as we're looking forward, we've actually added quite a few elementary positions because we were getting closer to that higher number. So we're kind of flip-flopping a little bit where I think moving into next year, our secondary teachers are going to be kind of a standard of 120 students a day, where our elementary will be less than this. That's responsive to teacher feedback, because if you haven't heard this, you're about to hear it. Kids are different now. You know, they need a little bit more attention. They need a little bit more early intervention. They need a little bit more help. If we can help those students K through 6, then when they get 7 through 12, they're a little bit easier to deal with in the best way possible. You know, they're back to good. Any questions on the FTEs and how we're looking at classroom sizes and those sorts of things? So this is tied to the 10A. This is saying, and we're not asking for any waivers. So there's not a kindergarten teacher in the district that's going to have 25 students looking forward. And what happens is due to like programmatic needs, if we had 3 first grade teachers at Milan and they only need 2, but the kindergarten needs an extra teacher, we'll move that teacher just to make sure that we're not overworking any one employee too much, because it can't happen.
It's also being responsive to our budget. If you have, we'll just make it easy, high school, we have a caseload of 75, you're hiring 2 teachers at a full cost of an FTE to carry 1 caseload. And so then we're not maximizing our budget when it comes to FTE, and we're actually overspending. So there's numbers that play into carrying the caseload and what we can provide and what we can't provide.
How do you like long-term substitutes play into this?
Yeah, so we really start in January in terms of placement for next year. So Mrs. Jones can weigh in on this as well. We hear rumors, it's kind of funny, people are gonna retire and people are gonna leave, and we really just have to be really firm in how we plan things out. It's our goal that every student in our district has a certified teacher in front of them. So like long-term subs, if we have a long-term sub going into next year, it's our goal to either get that long-term sub to a teaching license or to replace that long-term sub with a certified teacher. So it's difficult to do outright just because we have staff appreciation Friday. Everyone, for the most part, has resigned, as far as we know, retired, those sorts of things. Mr. Widener might get a letter on June 15th that says, hey, by the way, I'm deciding not to come back in 15 days from now. So it is difficult. That's why we have bars, and that's why it breathes and moves, because our systematic needs happen too. The hypothesis is that this year might be the year that all the COVID babies become kindergartners. like we could see a huge spike in that because people were at home 5 years ago and not doing anything. So birth rates actually peaked during COVID. I don't know that we'll see that, but that's something that we kind of have to be prepared.
Shelter in place.
Long-term
Well,
plans as well.
It's interesting too, because
No, they do.
it's interesting too, because we start the school year and like Cubero this year. We started with 2 kindergarten classes. And we had 1 kindergarten class, well, then we had an influx of kindergartners. So we had to come with another class, and so we're adding a teacher in September, trying to get a teacher in that classroom, so. So that does affect some of the long-term subs and, but as of right now, we have one position.
And we're pretty fortunate on the long-term sub piece. We have got some local people, like people from our community that are working on their degree in education. And so placing them as a long-term sub is kind of a good thing for us, like at least you're getting somebody that's in there that is going for their degree. We're gonna have a situation this fall where I think we're gonna have 3 that are ready to do student teaching, like 1 starting in August, so they will be ready to be hired in January when they finish their student teaching. And then another one that starts in January that'll be done in May, and another person that's on there last year. So we try to utilize those as long-term subs prior to, people that just want to pick up a job here or there, like the people that are committed to the profession and want to be in that profession, and that's their goal. So we have been fairly lucky this year with some of those people that want those positions. It's kind of helped.
Is any of the budget like allocated to helping individuals like achieve that? Or I'm just thinking like, I know like with social work, for example, right? Like there's a program where I can go and work for the state or a tribe for a certain number of years and it's paid for through certain like programs. Is there anything like that that exists for education?
So PED has got some initiatives where they will actually pay the teachers to do their student teaching. Because traditionally they would have to quit their job if they had a job and they were going to school, they would have to quit their job to move into the classroom to student teaching. So PED has some initiatives where they help.
They also have like the EA to Teach program, which is you're an educational assistant and they help you get financial support for your college and that student teaching salary is pretty phenomenal. That's a great thing.
And then with our EAs specifically that are in early childhood programs, so if they're with our 3Y and 4Y, the early childhood programs want them to be enrolled and actively pursuing a degree. So most of our EAs that are placed in those 3 and 4-year-olds, like we've got one that got an associate's, I think last year. So this coming year, she'll be on her last year of her degree. And so we have several people that are in those different programs, like an EA to Teach or the pre-K trying to get their teaching degree or their.
That doesn't run off from our budget though.
But
No,
she's
those are
John's
So it's from like the state.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and then there are like leadership programs too.
Sure.
So if a teacher has a master's degree and they really want to get into being a principal, they can be in that internship program. There's a aspiring superintendent program. So if
Well, to Donalyn's question is, Ress and Lacey it had to have been on the budget here. Cause when they were doing the student teaching, they were getting paid by the district
Mhm.
to do the student teaching. That's what you were asking, if there was money in the budget for that. They don't do that, we don't do that no more.
The state has kind of picked that piece.
They-
up, so
they've
we
taken
don't.
that.
Okay.
It's state funded, state grants. It's also based on the legislative session and then also who's the state secretary. Right, initiatives change.
Cause I remember they were excited that they were actually gonna get paid to do student teaching, but the district they were actually like on the payroll or like, I guess your substitute teachers or however that it's budgeted.
and
up.
now they all do.
And there have been changes, like even like when we had ESSER funds, so there are some programs, we have had some luck with people who've moved to the community that have degrees and they can get an alternative teaching license. There's different pathways for them to get an alternative license. So LEAP is one of those ways. which is through CES, and it is like $1,500 a semester. They get accepted to LEAP, and then PED will issue them a temporary license based on, you know, their alternative license based on their completion of LEAP. During ESSER years, when we had funds, upon successful completion, we would reimburse them for that expense. We don't have the ESSER funds now, so we've had to sunset some of those things, but we help when we can.
So LEAP, is that an acronym?
Yes, it is.
Like LEAP, like
LEAP, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, LEAP is an acronym. That's one of the ways that they can get, so if somebody has a bachelor's degree, but they really want to be a teacher, that's one of the ways that they can get certified. And the great thing about LEAP is for that $3,000, they finish that program and they have like 15 credits that they can use toward a master's degree. And so they're basically halfway to a master's degree when they finish that program, and at fairly low cost for the 15 credits that they get. They can also do an OPAL, which is an online portfolio for alternative licensure. That's one of the ways that they can also get an alternative license, or they can take college credit in specific courses that would help them with that. So there's different pathways depending on what type of licensure they have and how they're coming to us. We also have several community members who have like vocational, like 712 vocational license. So for example, Mr. Morel at the high school, he was a welder. That was his career. So he was able to get a vocational 712 license based on his prior work experience as a welder. And then he had to do micro credentials and a professional development plan and some other things in order to get that level 2 license. So when we have those great people that have the background, but maybe not the teaching piece, there are multiple ways that we can help for them to get licensed and support them with that process.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, pay attention, sharpen your pencils.
I should throw out there that Mr. Moreno has become a phenomenal teacher through the last 10 years of his career. He's
His job. He
he's
does such a
he's
That's the
phenomenal.
That Nikki does too, right? It's cosmetology.
Correct. Yeah.
You wanted buckets. Here they are. Okay, for you math people out there. So 100% would be that almost $45 million. What we do is we take the expense in these buckets and make that the numerator over the denominator, which is our budget, and that's how we come to these percentages. So $38.3 million from that almost 45 million is going to salaries and benefits for our employees. We have 515 employees. Really, most of our budget is right here in staff. So what is perfect about this is where we're education, we can't get away from educating without instructors. We're choosing to spend money on high quality instructors. The other thing to note is school districts in the state of New Mexico, a healthy range is anywhere from 80% to 85% of the SEG. So if you're in excess of 85%, especially when you get into the 90s, PED starts flagging you and saying, I don't know that you're going to be able to pay your bills, and it really eats up your carryover cash quickly. So with that said, where we were very, very generous and said, hey, let's make things right by giving everybody $1,000, that's really costly to do and truthfully not sustainable every year, because that means 10 years from now, our state minimums are going to be exceeded by $10,000, right? So I would, as the budget person, I would love to see this number come down through attrition, of course. We're not doing this layoffs. We're not asking anybody to retire, to go to heck or anything like that. But say we have a teacher that has a course load of 70 students at one of our high schools, and they decide to retire. We say those 70 students will fit in these other places, and then we don't rehire for that position. So when we budget for salaries especially, we are budgeting for positions needed by our student populations. So there are some teachers that eventually we just won't need if enrollment continues going the way that it has. I hope that it doesn't. I hope that our enrollment goes to 6,000 students and that we can continue hiring and continue expanding and all of those things. And the only reason I say that is put a pin in that. Next year, I hope that the 85% is more like 83% or 82%. My fear would be that it's 87 because in your in that packet as well, you have all of last year's budget and the year before that. Our SEG amounts are going down despite the unit value going up. So it puts us in a tighter spot every year. So we're 85.5% there. Facilities and utilities, you might see this on websites as like operation of plant, like the NMPED website. This is what it's costing us to keep the lights on and make sure the weeds are trimmed and make sure that our environments are safe, that the climate is controlled, which we have done a fantastic job with this year in comparison to last. That's stuff that we can't really get rid of. What we can do is go to PSCOC and ask for money to fix the GHS systems. So you make a one-time expense to hopefully get everything up to speed, and then you don't have to pay as much on the maintenance. So I'm really trying. It's helpful that Mr. Atencio is so frugal to take that 12% and get it below 10% moving forward. It is what it is. I can't change the price of natural gas. If I could, I would. Ancillary, and this is something that's really kind of married to special education. It's not totally funded. So this is how we supplement occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy services. 2.5 million is a lot. We're really looking, and this is another area that I would like to spend less GO money on and spend more Medicaid money on. The way that you do that is you really have to vet your providers and make sure that they are billable under Medicaid. Less money that I spend here on this slide means more money that I can spend in classrooms because everything is tied to
Does
something.
that include food? Does the food fall in that one? Does lunch?
Food has its own budget,
Wow.
so that's not part of the 11,000, not the operational, it's part of the food service budget, which they haven't published for this year.
So they don't go by how many students we got, they go by how many people get lunch?
How many people we feed.
So
So
they keep track of every kid that comes through the cafeteria.
absolutely. So
So
um,
if we have good food,
Or
we'll
kids.
have more kids eating in the cafeteria.
correct, which
You
means,
Good
you
thing.
can get pants for every kid.
yep, so some of our sites right now, just on the food, we're feeding like 40% of our kids. I mean, it's not good.
And that's my biggest complaint has been on the board is food.
So I'll kind of announce tomorrow, the RFP has closed. We had 5 people put in. 3 were selected and all 3 of them are coming tomorrow. We have students from every school site getting on a bus coming to central office. The students are going to pick who is doing the food next year.
So cool.
That's good.
I'm really excited.
So where does the classroom stuff come in, please?
Be specific for me.
Like, well, not just supplies, but like if there's, like the
Textbooks?
different programming for, like that a certain class would get, right? Like, where does that come?
Yeah, so a lot of like the program specific stuff is funded through title funds.
I see.
So that's like Dr. Martin's world with state and federal programs. So for example, and Mrs. Jones can weigh in on this as the former state and federal programs director, Perkins is a grant that is specific to CTE expenses. So when we have students that are going for competition and it's included in Perkins, Perkins picks up that expense. So this is
This is.
operational only.
Okay.
One thing that we do spend out of GO is like our credit recovery platforms and things like that. So if you have a student that has failed a class and they need to come and do summer school, we're purchasing that curriculum, if you will, that coursework through one of our providers. A lot of our textbook adoption has been loose. COVID really messed that up as well because everything was on a schedule and then it got to like, well, we don't need textbooks because we don't have students. Where this last year we adopted science. Science is really broad, right? Does that mean chemistry? Does that mean biology, life science, earth science? I mean, there's a lot of sciences, right? This year we're adopting math. So is it algebra? It's all of the things. So those are put on a rotation as well. I'll tell you that as the budget authority for the school district, if I have a teacher that comes to me and says, hey, I would really like to do XYZ, and it's meeting a student need, that's when Dr. Martin and I sit down and say, where can we find the money for this kind of stuff? Really, and this is something that we're developing as well, like, and I'll use Nikki's classroom as an example, like Nikki does a fantastic job. She's the cosmetology teacher at Grants High School. So do you guys know of any textbook providers for cosmetology that aren't like, I mean, a lot of what she brings is stuff that she's writing down and she's documenting and she knows how to do and she's dusting off old textbooks. Larry and I actually just made a connection with a company that provides curriculum for cosmetology if we wanted to go down that road. So the only caveat with funding through Perkins is that it has to be a total program of study, meaning this year I'm gonna take Culinary Arts 1, next year I'll take Culinary Arts 2, then I'll take Professional Baking, and then I'll take, Hospitality and Tourism. And don't quote me on those, that's just kind of how that process works.
Are those same things like cosmetology, and the other things you just mentioned, are they also offered at, Laguna Acoma High School?
So I can speak to that if you'd like for me to.
Please.
There are programs at Laguna Acoma High School, not necessarily duplicated, some of them are duplicated. So we have welding at both sites. So we have welding teachers at both facilities. And like you was mentioning, you have to have a complete program of study. So in order for it to be considered for Perkins funding, you have to have welding 1, you have to have welding 2, and then you have to have an opportunity for welding 3 or a capstone or some work-based learning or something. You have to have that whole progression for them to look at. If it's just one standalone class, they won't fund it. So through the Perkins funding, we're able to purchase metal and welding rod and gloves and whatever they need to weld, helmet, like all of the things. Or if you write it into the grant, you can pay for memberships, you can pay for them to go and test if they're gonna certify on a welding test, you can pay for their competitions, for travel, for food, for all the different things. So that being said, there are some programs that are much better at Laguna or better, I guess, staffed, not necessarily staffed. For example, and this is what I'm thinking of, so
Complete
like
programs of
Grants High
study.
School both have, I'm sorry?
Complete programs of study, so like.
True, but like Grants High School and Laguna Acoma both have like health services, like a health pathway. So they both have teachers, they both have the anatomy tables, those digital anatomy tables where you can remove layers of things. You have the pictures of the cadaver and you can go to the nervous system, you can go to the bones, you can go to the organs, like whatever. So you can remove levels and look at things without actually having to have your hands on a cadaver. So both programs have that. At Laguna, they had the opportunity to have that health services teacher next to an empty classroom. And she saw that opportunity around with it. She's like, I need hospital beds. I need this. I want to teach students how to, to get their CNA. How do we make the beds? How do we change beds? How do we transfer patients? So they had a different vision for their program and we've supported that versus the vision.
And their HOSA is thriving and that's
Correct.
your niece is in that and so.
So
it's-
then like.
And it's interesting, like the broadcast program at Grants High School really took off and that's the kids really like that. Well, then we replicated that at Laguna and so now it's a broadcast, but it's more like video production.
And it's baby
Whereas
stages. Where-
GHS is kind of going down the media road. Laguna's doing more like video production and movies and that kind of stuff. And so
And
it's,
like Laguna has that Amatrol lab where they have $800,000 worth of equipment to teach kids about circuits and HVAC and that's not duplicated at Grants High School. Where Grants High School has cosmetology, that's not duplicated at Laguna. So we've been kind of, I guess, responding to the needs and what the equipment we have and the need that we have and the interest that we have to provide those programs at different places. I think through the Amatrol, there's even some things where they can like get certified
there's
to
some
work on slot
robotics
machines
and
yeah.
the idea, Amazon is not far from Laguna Acoma. So if we could get our kids trained in that kind of stuff, they could go work at Amazon and or in those high tech.
Now we're talking about EMTs, EMT training.
We do have programs at each in paramedic.
But I didn't know the high school had that same table.
Something to remember is enrollment also can drive programming. You have to offer the core.
Mhm.
And then you have 200 at Laguna and you have 800 at Grants High. So the course offerings can be a little larger.
Sure.
So we can't forget that enrollment drives it. Also, anything we offer needs to be standards based and standards aligned. And the curriculum that we adopt should be supplemental.
And really trying to meet the needs of the communities. So like public services, that's probably a big pathway in our community that, you know, if we could train our kids in being police officers and being, you know, working at a prison or forestry, you know, that kind of stuff, that those are important jobs in our community. And so
But does that come from the auxiliary funding?
No, and what they're alluding to is that local industry also drives programming, so it would do us little good if we had programming that turned students into lumberjacks. Right, because there's just not lumberjacks in Grants, New Mexico. It's not something that it would be worth their time.
but we could teach our kids heavy equipment. We could teach our kids.
And that's, we're reevaluating, and partnerships are really important there, especially where we're blessed to have New Mexico State University grants close by, where we can start partnering with dual credit and things like that, where if there's a student that's welding with Mr. Murayo, they can go to the college and get certified in welding so that when they graduate, they have something to fall back on. Even if they're going to college, traditional school, they could weld all the way through college and never have student loan payment. I mean, we're trying to be smart about the needs of our community because we want people to be here and be invested, but also giving students the flexibility and the resume to push outside of Grants, New Mexico, outside of 87020.
Well, and sadly, there's not a lot of funding for middle school CTE. And so that's where the kids are exploring their careers. They, you know, we have programs at Los Alamitos and we have programs at Laguna Acoma Middle School, but there's not a lot of funding for that. So
And they're largely exploratory, like you said, at that level, where we want kids to kind of be able to look at different things. And was this for me? Can I see myself doing this job or not? Or
well, and the
what
idea is
this
that they,
job, and we had a lady that told the story that her son, I don't remember what he said he wanted to do, but he always said, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. And so she set up like a virtual field trip and he like watched this and he's like, I don't want to do this. This is terrible. Like what? So he was able to change his pathway before it was too late. So, and we are, and with the Perkins also, like as it comes down, there are state priorities. So the state will pick priorities and then regional priorities. And our region is the Northwest. So we're with the Farmington, Shiprock, Aztec area. And then we can pick a local priority. So those priorities are driven by high growth, high wage jobs. And they look at workforce solutions and all of the data to see which sectors are growing and at what rates, and if those are providing adequate standards according to cost of living as far as the wages, and then those are the ones that they say, well, here are the priorities. So for our local priority, we can actually choose something that's like not on that list. If we see the need locally that the state or the district or the region didn't meet, then that's when we can step in and say, yeah, we see a need here for what we have in our community. So it allows us to spend money in any of those areas. So if the state says education, business, and technology, great. And then if the region says agriculture, healthcare, and broadcasting, digital media,
engineering.
yeah, and then locally we could say, hold on, we have a need for public service. So it gives us an option to kind of choose where we want to put money in those buckets, or if, you know, maybe that doesn't really apply to us. Do we really want to, you know, I don't even remember. There was one that came down a few years ago and I thought that doesn't really apply to kids in grants. And so we need to do something different. So we can or can't put money in those places. So Perkins is pretty specific about how you can spend money. So we do have other buckets that we can take things from if we need to be responsive to those needs of those teachers.
And currently there are only two districts in the state of New Mexico that have cosmetology programs. Us and Las Lunas. And so
The last thing that I'll add, just to kind of tie that up, is there are things that are split funded as well. So might pay 50% out of GL, 50% out of Title I. A good example of that is like classroom supplies. So Title I allows for us to buy student supplies for us, it's better to use that title money that could go away and spend it when cut hay when the sun's shining versus saying, let's make Geo eat that and then let's protect Title I. Really, we try to protect Geo as much as we can, which is this, the SEG. I'll give you another example. Some of our salaries and positions are split funded. So Mr. Chavez, as the director of special education, part of his salary comes out of special education because part of his day is on special education. So this is just the GO salaries. When I come back, I'll present on all of the title awards as well. Those are very, very specific in terms of, like Mrs. Jones said, if the Perkins grant says we're gonna buy purple flowers and we try to buy red flowers, they will deny it and we can't spend it. You have to be painfully specific on all of those things. So that's kind of just the rules to the game with those federal funds.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Around the budget, so like for our students with disabilities, like do we pay for things like that they may need, like I don't know, like if we have any like wheelchairs, ASL interpreters, like closed captioning, right? Those things, like does that come out of this or no?
It depends.
Or it's braided?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's braided. So like a good example of this is we had a student that was visually impaired.
Mhm.
So we made sure that they had software that would do read to
Reading, right.
text to read,
Mhm.
right? So they open up a web page and it starts reading it to them and that kind of stuff. So that would come out of like a software budget. The Chromebook that they were using would come out of a software budget. The staff member that is sitting there helping them would have come out of the special ed budget.
Okay.
So braided is a good term.
Mhm.
Yep, lots of stuff that's braided. So technology and software, which we were just talking about, it's 1.25. This is again specific to Geo. It costs money for us to have a Google Workspace. It costs money for us to have Microsoft, the internet that we're all using right now. All of those things cost money. The technology budget is actually significantly larger than that. The district participates in a program that's called E-rate that reimburses us up to 90% of that amount. So really your budget is almost double that. They help paying things like web providers and that kind of stuff. So just in that last budget, the 517 is the budget that we got for instructional materials. It's likely inadequate. We might end up spending almost double that. And then the next three are supplements from title funds. So we supplement impact aid 200,000, transportation 100,000, supplies, classroom supplies 73,000, athletics. This is like the girls volleyball team needs new volleyballs or they need nets and that kind of stuff, which is really pretty inexpensive. The last 2 points on that last column are really important. Our restricted cash is to be determined. So you mathers out there, 85% plus 12% plus 5.5% plus 1.25%. We're really at 106% of our budget. So that missing piece to get us to balance is our carryover cash. So when we get our carryover cash, we're able to put that in restricted cash and fill in some of these other places that we're missing so that it does balance. And that's why we have to have a preliminary approval, an acceptance of an audit, and then a final approval. PED knows that we're lopsided because they made us be lopsided. So I included in the drive as well an email from Lorenzo Dominguez. He's our PED analyst that kind of outlined, we understand that this isn't ideal, this is what you need to do. And I thought he was being very, very gracious, saying that the 901B10, 901B5 has to be submitted by the end of the year. The reason for that crunch is the SEG amounts, even though the fiscal year starts in July, sometimes we don't get that until like mid-August. So if you don't have the ability to spend your cash that you're carrying over, we don't make payroll. The classrooms get hot, the buildings are dark. So that's really the last piece that we need to make sure that everything balances. And I'll make sure that you're up to date on the total audited figure. Mr. Manning will come to the board and provide that audit. What we've done to make it balance now is we've used the closing cash balance for the year previous that we had on hand. it should be mostly accurate. Our auditor chases every single dollar, so there will be some variability there. We love audits. Audits show us how to do better.
So they do so like you said, they have us offset, but do they ever do sweeps and come back and collect?
They will if you're carrying too much cash. So we're not in a position to quote unquote hide money from PED because it's all expended. I'm not saying that it's not possible to hide money from PED. So
We would never.
we would never.
You know, Cooper's being very gracious too, or Mr. Jones is being very gracious. As a board, you guys are kind of being penalized a little bit because last year's board drug their feet. And we were right under the microscope approving the budget. And so Cooper's getting a little fire that says, you better have this budget in, or you won't make payroll in July. And your 500 employees won't get a paycheck. So we have to approve this budget.
And on that, there's no reason why we wouldn't approve it. There's no foreseeable reason why we wouldn't approve it. Really, a lot of what the board does when they approve the SEG budget especially is, yes, we will take money from the state. Yes, we will continue operating for a school district for another year. I mean, I'll say this, anything that you need that I can provide you, I will do it. If you need this presentation in Mandarin because it'll help you understand the budget better, I will go learn Mandarin. I mean, I would.
I know a guy.
Yeah. We probably know the same guy. So, I'll go just a step further and kind of tie this back into the strategic plan. So when 85% of your budget is going to instruction, we make sure that they're high quality instructors, which part of that is providing professional development to our people. Mr. Morayo is a good example. I know a lot of welders. I don't know a lot of welders that can teach high school kids. So what we do is we take their industry experience and their ability to work as a welder, and we say, let me teach you how to be a teacher. So one thing that's coming up and is in the queue is the proposal for Marzano to extend an additional year. That's totally paid for by Title I, and that's why you don't see it here. So we need to attract and retain quality educators, which we've done. To have one vacancy going into a school year is actually unheard of. It's crazy that we've had as much traction as we have.
I just want to add one point on the Marzano, because it's going to come up in the future. The work we're doing as a district with Marzano is very important because the state will be transitioning to that work starting in July. So kind of ahead of the game, and we're right on the right path to make change, but that is a good investment because the state is making that transition as well.
And high quality education, how the EAs, how are they qualified, or how do, let's say you need a substitute for EA, or I want to be an EA, but I don't have no training in education. How do you guys, what are the EAs, what kind of qualifications do they have? Do they get certified? Are they qualified to be with kids?
They do. They have to take a parapro test in order to get their license. And so there's testing they have to do, or they have to have an associate's degree or something along those lines in order to be certified to be an EA. And those are things that when we do the state reporting, so we do the 40, 80, 120 end of year, those licensure discrepancies come up. So as they have all of our data from Synergy, from our student information system, which also houses our staff information with licenses and all that kind of stuff. If there's any discrepancies and we have Cooper hired as an EA, but Cooper does not have an EA license, it sends us a discrepancy. And so then our department gets together and reaches out and says, hey, we've got this licensure discrepancy. We need you to apply for the EA license. And we can actually do the parapro test. Josie can schedule the parapro test. We have a setup in our records room where she can go in and proctor that parapro test so that they can test to get that certification.
And then I'm gonna go back to Donald's question. Is there like long-term EAs?
Long-term EAs,
Not
like
long-term-
subs?
Yes, subs.
There are. We have some situations where we have students who have been transferred to our district through placement with CYFD, and they come with an IEP, and with that IEP, they need a one-on-one supervisor. Because they are placed in a situation because of CYFD, we don't want to hire a person because if they then go back to their home, we are left with an employee that we don't have a place for. So it's better for us to put an EA in that position while that student is in our district, and then when that student moves out of our district, we aren't obligated to continue to pay a salary and benefits for somebody who we truly don't have a place for.
It's also really unfair to hire EAs under the district in April. Especially if they're a one-on-one, because teachers get checks at the end of the year. So if you're an EA, you only have a month to pay into that, so you get
Pennies on
20% of what your normal check would be from April to whatever, where an EA, you can pay them a flat hourly rate. And we might just say, hey, let's get you to the next year and then we'll get you a contract or whatever. So the long-term subs, as much as it pains me, will never ever just totally go away, because we need to have the ability to hire mid-year because our program kind of changes. And then those teachers and EAs get those checks over the summer when they're
And those long-term
And
subs don't
that
get benefits.
situation- We've had that situation where we've hired people and it's like in February and they look at their first check and they're like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, this is not what I'm gonna,
Cause it's prorated.
because we,
Do they get benefits too?
they do, they get benefits as well if that's what they opt into, but because we prorate and we pay them 26 paychecks a year, but they're only working August through May, if they come in February, they're working February, March, April, May, but so they're working 4 months, but we're paying them 6 months. So their checks, when they get that check, they're like,
60%.
and so what we would like to do, if it's a good quality candidate, we will refer them to ESS so they can sign up for ESS, they can become a long-term sub. And then after they've worked for ESS for 90 days and it becomes the start of the new school year, we can hire them then if that need still exists, so that they get the full benefit of being with the district for the full year. And I don't feel like it's right to do that to people when you're saying, yeah, this is your hourly rate, and then they get their check and they're like, that math isn't mathing. That does not add up to what I signed up for. So we try to make sure that, like, we've had a few people that they may just want to do that because their spouse works and they're wanting to do that for the benefits or whatever it is. And we tell them that up front so that they have that information coming into that and kind of leave that option. And if they're like, I'm just doing it for the benefits, that's fine with me. My spouse works, that's fine. But we don't want them to be surprised and
I
to be
don't
disgruntled
know
with
a lot
us
about
when
their-
they receive it.
Get sick or get to the
because they
back
pay
of
more
it,
than what I thought
God
it was. So
forbid. and then
we're trying to be very
somebody
transparent with
just
people.
to sub
and
in.
Yeah.
It's fine, but sub till now, and then in August, we can hire you full-time where you're really gonna get paid.
And that's a good example of keeping a healthy cash balance and being flexible, because if those students come and go and they don't hit one of those windows, 40th, 80th, or 120th, then they don't count and they don't produce revenue.
Good questions.
Well, I just wondered, cause I was asking Francie, she
Yeah.
told me to ask you guys.
Perfect. So, and then I'll go to the last one. Part of what we're expending money on is also offering tiered support, which is really focused on like the well-being of the child, social emotional learning, and also attendance. Mr. Widener is a fantastic agriculture teacher. He was explaining that as a teacher, his goal was that when he had students, it was the Mr. Widener show. You know, he wanted the engagement and he wanted students to be there. That's engagement is a huge piece of quality instruction. If we have really engaging teachers, attendance goes up, proficiency goes up, graduation rates go up. You know, like having those really, really good people there and then spending money to make sure that they're improving and getting better and that they have opportunities to grow is really like the meat and potatoes of what we do. And then columns 2 and 4, we're really focused on making sure that our schools are safe and that our schools are welcoming and that our schools are serving good food in the cafeteria and that our kids are happy and feel good to be on school, which is why in the strategic plan budget survey, we ask those questions like, do students feel good on our campus? Do they feel engaged? You know, so that we can adjust and make things happen. And then the last thing, like the way that our budget is, especially with the talent that we have and the pathways that are available to our students, we have students that have competed nationally and internationally with things like Science Fair and things like skills. And it's really cool because I would take our kids and line them up against any kid in the nation, and I think that they could compete. And that's really what we want to give kids. We want to give them that experience where they can go and get an education and hopefully come back and benefit. I kind of have a half slide in here because I know you're about to ask about Yazi Martinez. I know it's coming. So, and more of a discussion than anything, where our school district is really 45, 42-ish% Native American and another 40 to 45% Hispanic. 90% are either Native American or Hispanic. Those other 10% are Anglo students, they're African American students, Pacific Islander students, Filipino students. All of our kids that come to our campus, they're sitting next to the peers that are the same or different or whatever. They're all getting the same quality of instruction. They're all eating the same food. They're all on the same campuses. With that said, I don't know how not to build a budget with Yazi Martinez in mind because all of our students fall under Yazi Martinez. It's hard for me to say this is the Yazi Martinez money because I think all of it is Yazi Martinez money. And I don't know how to get around that because I know that that's something that in tribal consultation comes up often. How are you being responsive to Yazi Martinez? And I think that with high quality instruction and attendance initiatives and making sure that our sites are welcome, I think that we've checked that box. Not that it is a box to check, but I think that we're totally above the board. I also think that history is really important there, where the Yazi Martinez lawsuit was not parents suing school districts or tribes or nations or pueblos suing school districts. It was school districts suing the state that the SEG wasn't fair because the SEG was kind of across the board and kind of flat. And students that live in 87020 or Cibola County are at an economic disadvantage to students that live in Los Alamos. So how is it fair that their unit value is the same? So we were one of the plaintiff districts that sued the state to make that happen. And I think that that kind of gets lost in translation as well. Like the state needs to have their feet held to the fire, which we're doing to make sure that it's totally fair. I don't know how not to do it because all of our students are Yazi Martinez students.
And I think I know three of you are new board members, but I think you know Yazi Martinez pretty well. There are 4 subgroups. They are students who are IEP'd. That includes gifted students, that includes leveled special education students. There are students that are Native American. There are students that are English language learners, as well as students that are from low socioeconomic communities. Every one of our students in this district qualifies for free and reduced lunch. And so we're considered a low socioeconomic community. So all of our children, all of our students, all 2,982 are classified as Yazi Martinez students. There is culturally responsive. There is, we do need to offer culture. We do need to offer Keres classes, Navajo classes, Spanish classes, and that's also part of our accreditation. We'll be offering language classes at the elementary level, and so there is. You look at the buckets, and there's not a whole lot of money there. And but if we do after school tutoring and we have a drum making class at Cabero, that is a way to be responsive to Yazi Martinez, and or we offer credit recovery at no cost to the students. That's also being responsive. Providing school supplies and Chromebooks and that kind of stuff is also part of that too.
Under my department, there are a couple areas we still need to improve. Special ed transportation is something we've talked about. We need to do better there because that is one of those subgroups. We've talked about peer-to-peer tutoring, right, with our students. So there's areas where we can improve what we've identified and we're not ignoring them. It's just going to take a little bit of time to problem solve.
Perfect. Second to last slide. So these are kind of the next steps. This is us looking forward from May 5th to June 30th. So we needed to have this meeting. We needed to get into the buckets and how things are broken up and really the timeline that PED is expecting. We need to approve this budget. We need to approve the draft budget as it stands so that the district can show PED that we are actively making progress, that we are meeting with the board and that the board is up to date on those things, which is a big portion of the 901B5 is that you're in the loop, you know how that's happening. We can't spend money on July 1st without a board approval. So after the draft budget, we'll have the audit presentation by Mr. Manning. In that meeting, my hope would be that we accept the audit. Shortly thereafter, we accept the budget or we approve the final 26-27 budget. So ideally, it could be the same meeting. I don't know that Mr. Manning is going to give me a draft audit before you all accept it. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. Ideally, we get this done the first meeting in June and we can say we're ready to roll, PED is happy, we have budget authority, and we can execute as expected on July 1st with our carryover cash and all of our revenues in place. I'll leave this with you. I really am so happy to answer any questions that you might have. Please reach out to Mr. Widener. My hope would be that today, May 5th, you reread through this, you sit on it, and if you have any questions, you ask Mr. Widener, and that on May 19th, we take action to approve the draft budget so that I can give PED the compliance piece of working towards a final budget. So I'll admit that I don't love how that's working out with PED. It makes it really difficult when they say, here's your budget. By the way, I need you to show me how you're going to spend it in the next 2 days. It's been an interesting experience. I hope that next year they ask for a budget approval at the end of May or the beginning of June so that we don't have to do the duplication of meetings and making sure that everybody's up to speed the whole time. So there's nothing secret about the budget. Everything that's in the drive is public. It is on PED's website. You can find Grand Cibola County Schools. The code, as we've talked about, is 088-000. Anything with that shows us what our awards are. Keep an eye on that drive. I'll keep dumping stuff in as I get it because we'll get an award letter for transportation and student nutrition and all of those other things. This budget is by far the most complex out of all of those others. I mean, student nutrition, what are you gonna spend that on? Feeding kids. Student transportation, what are you gonna spend it on? Buses and bus drivers. You know, it's really cut and dry from here on out.
Is there like, excuse me, some sort of notice that we get when you do add something? So just as for example, right? I mean, it was stated we got the packet on Friday, but we didn't. We got it yesterday. And so is there like, and it was there, right? Like it just wasn't in the drive to, so is there something like, do we get like a notice email when something is put in there so we know, or like, can you tell us when something is put in there?
Absolutely. So every time I add something, I'll notify Mr. Widener and tell him, hey, this is what I uploaded. It'll all be in that big folder. So absolutely happy to do that. Especially just with as tight as our timeline has gotten, I would prefer that you have, 10 days to look at it or 7 days to look at it so that you can ask questions.
Can they add the notifications and tools so that anytime anything's added that you get a notification?
They can. I think that you can get into the drive and change your settings as well to notify when new documents are put in or when I edit something.
Oh, so I have to set that up on my
Yeah,
end?
and I can show you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my other question around the budget, right? Because I can be very like linear from compartmentalize things,
Yeah.
right? And so when I'm looking at like this plan and tying it to our budget, it's just the SEG budget
Correct.
that we're approving. And so when we say we're tying it like even to this draft plan that includes 2026, like I'm like, oh, goal one fits in here, right? Like that's the way I'm looking at it. So can you just like explain that a little bit more, in terms of like, cause, okay, so for example, so, and maybe this is part of, I don't know, the discussion, like creating a safe, environment, right? To me, like when I look at the buckets that you created, I'm like, okay, that's probably facilities, right? A big chunk of that. So, I'm just trying to tie the goals, on this draft plan into like these buckets that we have.
Yeah, it's a great point. So one thing that we did recently was we have a security system that has intrusion and panic buttons and motion detection and access control and visitor check-in and all of those things. It's called Verkada. We paid for Verkada out of our capital bond. So that's something that doesn't necessarily touch the SEG budget, but is very much an expense that is in line with safe schools. I'm happy to, when we do the final budget presentation, kind of outlining how we're facilitating the strategic plan. The focus of the SEG especially is, as a GL, meaning general operations, it really is like upkeep of facilities and high quality instruction, because that is what PED has earmarked it for us. That's where they say you have to spend the money in these areas. So if we had a goal, and I don't know, if we had a goal that every student had an engraved water bottle, that's probably not something that we say, hey, let's take SEG money that should go to facilities and spend it on water bottles. We'll find other funds for those sorts of things. That was a terrible example, but again, everything is totally interwoven, so that there's not a need that goes unmet.
Back to Donald's on the, so that's strictly SEGs. A lot of my questions are the demolition of Mesa View, the Continental Divide building, and the old school board building. Where does that fall into place?
So I can, since you asked, I can update you. The demolition of both old central office and the old boardroom are finalized. We're really just waiting for a contractor to come and tear those down. Those buildings were totally funded by PSFA and PSCOC. So that demolition didn't cost the school district anything.
And how about the construction of the Continental Divide building?
So construction of Continental Divide is pending because of the mess that you're all aware of at Mesa View. PSFA really wants us to finish Mesa View and get those buildings torn down before we start talking about future projects. I did start the ball rolling on the construction and design of New Mount Taylor. PSFA is seriously understaffed. They have, I think, 195 projects that are live right now. They have 8 project managers. So each project manager is doing something like 23 to 25 projects at a time. So that means that our guy that comes to grants every other Wednesday, he's got 20 other districts to meet in a 2-week period. I mean, it's kind of crazy. So if you know anybody that wants to work for PSFA, send them, because they need staffing bad.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
So I guess like my question, like if we look at goal 1, it says foster student excellence and academic achievement, right, with curriculum that recognizes our cultural diversity. So what bucket does that fit in?
It fits into a couple. So it would fit into the salaries and benefits bucket because we're attracting talent to come and be here and teach at a certain standard. That would also fall into the instructional materials bucket because we want high quality instructional materials, because you can have a high quality instructor and low quality materials and get pretty middle of the road student success. You can also have low quality instructors and high quality instructional materials and have the same outcome. The goal, really, the sweet spot is high quality instruction, high quality instructors, and high quality materials, right? So that you are actually seeing that.
Federal funds.
Yep, and another way that that will show is in like Title I with Marzano, which I think that you will really enjoy. I'm not the instruction authority in the room, Dr. Rule, who is one of the people that comes here, has done a ton of work on cultural learning and making sure that students are teaching the whole student and teaching the student where they're at.
And like you say, that if you have good quality teachers and good quality products, kids will be excited to come to school because they can't wait. Like what attracted me was ROTC. I couldn't wait to go to school, come to school because I knew I was gonna go, it was ROTC. My kids in sports. They
Yeah.
showed up to school because of the sports. I showed up for ROTC. Everybody has, so it's always that apple that you've got to hang to get the kids to. And it could be the teacher, a quality teacher.
I'll go on the,
Like welders at Laguna, or hey, I'm gonna go to Laguna, they got good welding teacher there, or they got good equipment.
I'll go on the record. I bet our attendance is 15% better next year, just because the food's better. Kids will come to school to eat better food.
As long as they're eating, it's easier to learn. It's hard to listen and pay attention when you're hungry.
And now the other reason why I came was for food, and they cooked it I could smell the food as soon as I walked to the school grounds, I couldn't wait to eat. You don't smell it no more, you don't even smell the cafeterias.
Just to carry it
Does that
out.
answer your question?
Well, just looking at some of like the objectives under there, right, like improve student academic achievement, provide, create educational environments. I mean, I think you talked to that, in regard to like the culture, right, of the classrooms. So on goal 2, that will be salaries as well then, right?
Say again which goal 2 is.
Instill excellence in teaching and leadership.
Correct. So goal 2 will be salaries and benefits. That also feeds into some of our title programs and also programs through like the EA to Teach or OPAL. Like we're giving our staff opportunities to upgrade and to be better. Marzano Resources also fits that need with professional development. One thing that we did that's kind of structurally is our director of instruction next year will have 2 coordinators of teaching and learning that will be specific to elementary education for one and secondary for the other, so that we have local people that are getting into classrooms and helping principals do evaluations and making sure that we're teaching standards-based and making sure that our classrooms are organized the right way. And we're really, I don't wanna say picky, but we've been really smart in terms of how those committees are formed and how the questions and the interviews are, so that we have true masters of instruction that we can utilize to help. Because like I could probably teach a college class on accounting or on finance or markets or those things. Because adults are easy to teach. I don't know that I could teach kindergartners. I would need help from somebody that knows how to teach kindergartners to teach kindergartners. So that kind of, we're instilling excellence in teaching and leadership by providing them resources to upgrade. I'll tell you, and I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'll make it quick. I don't love the old strategic plan. I think it's too soft. I think it's too flowery. I mean, how do you quantify
I was just gonna say.
instilling excellence? I mean, it sounds.
Gonna ask that, like, we need smart goals, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Specific and measurable and
That was,
timely, realistic.
that was one of the things, one of the consultants that we've like just kind of talked to about like our strategic plan. He looked at this and he's like, this doesn't even have student outcomes. Like, how do you
Yeah.
measure this? So he read through it and like, that was the first thing he picked up on is how do you like, great goal, but how do you measure that? Like, it's just fluff, like, so.
So I guess that is
Recognizing
my,
that.
that's my like concern, like, how do we tie something like that I'm not feeling great about, right? And it sounds like maybe there are others not feeling great about it, to a budget we're supposed to approve in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so 2 things. One, all school districts in every state and every county needs to have goals regarding proficiency, attendance, and graduation, because that is what we're paid to do. That is why we're here. I also think that it is wise to include a goal about campus culture, bullying, safety, those sorts of things, because it's something that is unavoidable. With that said, I think that the way that the board proceeds in terms of the budget and the strategic plan, and this is my understanding of the thing, and I will speak to my own opinion. I think that the board needs to really set the goals of the strategic plan and then utilize your employee to write the plan according to the goals that you set. So if the goal is that we graduate 82% of a cohort, then Mr. Widener has the ability to say, we're gonna make a plan to make sure that we're graduating 82% of a cohort. If the goal is that we have a reduction in chronic absenteeism by 20%, Mr. Widener gets to go to his team and say, guys, how do we get kids in seats more regularly? And then what we can do is we can say, we need more tools for our SSAs to use so that they can get in contact with parents, so that our parents are aware that our students are missing. I mean, I think that the strategic plan ideally is like no more than 4 pages. I think that it needs to say, these are the goals in this plan, and when you accomplish that goal, you retire it and you bring in a new goal. Or if the proficiency is, we're gonna have 30% proficiency for our 3rd graders in reading, and we get to 33%, then we say, cool, let's go to 43%, or let's go to 40%. I mean, I think that it needs to live and it needs to breathe. I don't wanna get into like, you guys should reevaluate every 6 months or anything like that. I think that that's more your say. And
I think we reevaluate it when we do our evaluations, right? Like.
For sure.
That's what we're asking the district to do, is carry out like what's on the strategic plan.
For sure. Yeah, so one thing that that Mr. Widener started doing with the agenda is he was tying action that the board was taking to a strategic plan goal. Because if you're gonna live and die by the strategic plan, you really shouldn't do all that much outside of the strategic plan. Of course, that's that caveat where like the strategic plan doesn't tell us to pay utilities, but we have to pay
Right,
utilities.
absolutely.
You know, that's part of a safe and inclusive learning environment for our students. So I feel like that's a great transition into the strategic plan discussion.
I do have one more question, and it's a little bit of a pushback, and I did talk with Mr. Widener about this. I think there's some maybe misconception and misunderstanding of Yazi Martinez, and so I think it would be really beneficial if we have a presentation, and I had suggested a couple individuals that could probably do that, because I don't think Grants is a plaintiff, right? Grants School District is not a plaintiff in Yazi Martinez. It's a suit that was brought on by families, and so maybe, right, and I'm just misunderstanding when you say that Grants is part of that, because we did have families, right, in the district who are actually part of that, those named plaintiffs. And so I think that would be really helpful, so everybody is clear on what that is, right? Because I also think that some of the huge things, and this is actually in New Mexico law on poverty, and that's what I was looking for. I'm glad you it's like I couldn't find it. It was been driving me nuts. Was in regards to, right, addressing insufficient funding issues on pre-K programs, extended learning, literacy initiatives, class size, counseling, and social services, like within the district. And so, like when I read that and look at the strategic plan, and then trying to tie that into these buckets, I don't see that. And so that's why I'm like, very like, I'm okay if you like draw stuff out for me, right? So that I understand it. Because I don't understand. I know we have to pay teachers, and I know we have to pay for salaries, and we have to pay utilities, right? But I think one of the things, right, like Yazi Martinez is not new, right? Like it's over 10 years old. And so I think that, right, like just having the honest and courageous conversation of like, maybe we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing in this regards, because it's, here we are like 10 years later, right? This is still a huge issue. And so I think that my questions around Yazi Martinez are like around that, like how are these, and I mean, yeah, I know like a lot of our students can fit it. I don't think every student fits it. And I think some of what's laid out in Yazi Martinez really do address those deficiencies within districts, not just grants, but to address the issues of poor student outcomes across the board. And so I still do have questions on that, but I know, that's kind of where my questions tie into, so, and maybe I'm happy to talk about it more or ask more questions, in that regards, but I think there is some misconception and misunderstanding about really what Yazzie Martinez is asking districts to do.
So let me ask a direct question in response to your question. Take my understanding of Yazzie Martinez totally out of it. Based on your understanding of Yazzie Martinez, how is the budget not responsive to that need?
So, well, which is why I was asking, right, like, how do these goals, line up with this? And so like, where are we funding like counseling and support services? And it may be in title funding, right, but we're not approving title funding, we're approving the SEG. So where are, extended learning opportunities in the SEG budget? Like, where is that in this bucket? So those are kind of like I said, I'm very like, oh, I can tie this to this, or I can tie this to this, and you know what I mean?
I think going into the strategic plan item next is something to discuss on some of those goals and tying into your one pager there. I think that's something to be discussed.
Mhm. So is that something, right, in our strategic plan discussion, are like, how are we, because it seems like the budget is pretty set, right? And so I guess for me to feel comfortable approving the budget that has just been presented and is pretty much set, like, I need to be able to see that, and like, where are we? Because these are carryover from an old strategic plan, like, where are we on the outcomes of these, if this is what we're tying to the budget that we're approving into?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I think that it would benefit the board if you could maybe see the programs that we're providing based on the SEG budget, because we're very much paying counselors and we're very much paying for a crisis prevention and we're very much paying for after school tutoring and intervention and all of those things. I think that it might be helpful for you to maybe, like, it's probably an instruction presentation.
That would be very helpful.
A presentation from the instruction department saying, these are the services, Mr. Chavez as well on the special ed, these are the services that we provide so that we can meet the needs of the students of the district.
Yeah, that would be, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to see those too.
I sit for questions.
2.5 hours, Mr. Jones.
This is what they asked for.
Sounds good.
It was very good.
Yeah.
Strategic plan. I'll go ahead and just take over.
Sir.
There has been a lot of discussion around who owns the strategic plan. Is it the superintendent's job to write the strategic plan? Is it the board's job to write the strategic plan? What should the goals be? Are they realistic? Are they attainable? There's proficiency goals, there's safety goals, there's staffing goals. And so we've had a couple of variations of strategic plans through the years. Our most recent strategic plan, the goals were far-fetched and not, couldn't really even get close to the mark. I came in as the superintendent in the middle of that strategic plan, and there wasn't even a track for getting those goals. There wasn't even a plan for getting those goals aligned. And so in the last 9 months since our strategic plan has passed, we were going to have board work sessions. We were going to have conversations. At one point, the board directed me to go to consultants and find out what consultants we could bring in. And then I was redirected, no, you and your team work on the strategic plan. And so board member Lorenzo's first meeting, I was presenting kind of the goals that we've come up with that are derived from the old goals. I mentioned good teachers and engaging classrooms and academics. That those are two of our goals that we have to have, right? So that's kind of where we are with the strategic plan right now. In your packets, there are 3 price quotes from consultants that will help us with the stakeholder meetings. They'll help us with the attainable proficiency goals. They're consultants that do strategic planning on the side. One of them is a CES vendor, and CES guarantees us they're gonna give us the contract, the best kind of contract there is. And so one of them, you guys get credits as board members, you get hours. And so that's kind of where we are with the strategic plan. Board member Lorenzo is absolutely correct. We need a strategic plan 9 months ago. We need a strategic plan right now to go with this budget. And so that's kind of where we're at. And I think I appreciate you all taking the time to talk about the strategic plan. I didn't include the goals that I presented
I
in.
was gonna say, do you want me to pull them up? I have them if you wanted me to
You
put it on the
can.
screen. It was what you gave us in February,
Correct.
that one.
I believe it was board member Lorenzo's first meeting. And we're,
It's in the.
and maybe we make
February
it a
24th
3-year
board
strategic
budget.
plan or.
It's
or-
not in,
Like tied to graduation cohort. The other thing that does, just my opinion, not that it matters, because I'm not on board, but if you did a 4-year plan, he's got a 3-year contract that gives your new superintendent a year to before you
Figure it out.
get into another plan, instead of you starting with a new superintendent and a new plan and he has no idea where he's come from or where he's going. It kind of gives you something to bridge that gap.
and board members, my apologies for not re-putting this in this board packet. That was my fault, and that's why I said I could just pull it up. But it was in the February 24th board packet.
So is it the same thing as the 2022 to 2025? We just changed it to 2026. That's the strategic plan.
We were following that one.
Correct, and
We inherited that. They were like not even on one when Francie and I came on.
Yeah, and like, so when you look at the board agenda and it says strategic plan goal 1 through 4, that's tied to that old strategic plan and
board member Lorenzo, I have seen in my time 2 versions, one that ended in 2025 and then the one that says that it ends in 2026. And so we had operated on it ending in 2025. And, you know, as you can see, there's one that says it ends in 2026. So we genuinely are not certain what the true end date is because we have seen 2 versions of the covers. And that's just transparency there.
and
One of them was a draft, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought the 2026.
sometimes I feel like we're driving really, really fast without a seatbelt. And so we need to get our seatbelt. Yeah, let's get our seatbelt. We need to be protecting ourselves and protecting our budget and protecting our kids. So I guess that's my question. What direction would you guys like to go with the strategic plan?
I think that's a great question for the board. You know, I don't have even a remote answer on how to send this forward. Because I have tried for a year and a half to get this going and we haven't taken that first step of saying, we want you to do it, we want, you know, a consultant to do it. And I think that's the purpose of bringing it up today is we all need to ask the question of ourselves, what is the next step here? You know, how do we proceed?
Do all of these, give us credit?
I believe,
I thought it was only CES that did.
yeah, I think it's dynamic
Dynamic leadership?
and
If we get credit.
CES.
Right.
Well, and part of it is the stakeholder meetings, right? So if you guys are attending the stakeholder meetings with your stakeholders, you get credit for that. And historically, those meetings don't have a great turnout. It's kind of like Mr. Jones and the budget meetings and we've had strategic plan questions in the surveys. But, you know, parents want safe schools, they want bully-free schools, they want engaging classrooms, they want, you know, they want culturally relevant learning, you know, and so. But if Mr. Jones doesn't feed them, they're not gonna come.
Right.
Food.
Right? We don't have money to do
Copies of it.
It's like the old joke. Eat lunch after Sunday service, everybody starts going to church.
Brandon knows my weakness is chips now, so. I could eat these all day.
Oh, good.
We'll just feed you chips.
Taquitos or
Had Taco
tacos.
Tuesday on Cinco de Mayo.
We have more of a grazer, I like this grazing.
Walter agrees with me.
President Lee, do you guys wanna take the next 2 weeks to look these proposals over?
Board members?
I added, Board Member Lorenzo, I added a Yazi Martinez presentation to the list that should not be named. The list that was removed, and so it will be on there as a future agenda item. If you guys are, if you want to, you could take the next 2 weeks, look over these proposals.
Goal development, Smarty, yay. I love our goals.
Yeah, and President Lee, if you'll share that, what you just had pulled up,
I'm doing that right now.
I think you've all had access, but put it in the top of your inboxes.
Yeah. What I'm doing.
Cause I think you all know that the team and I we participate in SOAR, which is kind of like a LEAP program. It's one of those, you know, and so when we go to SOAR, the whole thing is you need to build your strategic plan and you need to focus on your strategic plan. And so that's the work that has come out of SOAR. We've been in SOAR now for 2 years. And so that's a lot of the work that we've created based on the old strategic plan. And what's best for our kids.
Board members' feedback on moving forward, suggestions on moving forward.
Well, like Don said, I think we can have 2 weeks to percolate on this.
Well, and I think you guys, you might like one of the contractors and we'll say, okay. You know. We'll contract with them and have them
Facilitate.
facilitate it. Mhm.
Yes.
And I know. Most of you talk to other board members and school board folks and, some districts have just one pagers. And, you know, and so. I guess our strategic plan can be as complex as we want it to be. Kind of like the superintendent's evaluation, as.
I think the more complex, the harder, more difficult.
Well, I think our previous one was 26 pages and they weren't smart goals and they were hard to reach.
Agreed.
No, the last one had like 190 sub goals.
Yeah.
Like it was. Did you say 190? It was ridiculous. It was.
Unachievable.
Where
The
was?
superintendent's evaluation emulated that.
Where did Bonnie?
Mr. Weiner, you said, which two offered credit?
CES,
Leadership
Um,
does.
which is state vendor, state contracts, and dynamic learning.
Well, I think simple highlights of the three, presented options, CES. Talks about how many meetings and how they facilitate the, stakeholders and the involvement there. And I think the two other, independent will tailor it a little bit more specifically, not from a previous set kind of pathway. Because CES has provided strategic plans for multiple districts throughout the state. Whereas the other two, it's more of a starting point for them and getting it off the ground. But I'm not hearing anything from the board at this point. Do we want to move on to our last two items? And revisit this at the next meeting?
Yeah, that would give us time to look through and
All right,
Is that 2 weeks? Is that
2 weeks, the 19th,
19th.
yep, May 19th.
As I'm planning future agendas, would you like an action item?
I don't think that I think let's let the last board member weigh in on that. Because an action item would make sense because that would allow us to give the directive of how to go forward.
I'm gonna put Mr. Jones in charge of it. Mr. Jones, you're now the strategic planner for GCCS.
So board members, while we're here, May 19th, putting this on there, that gives us 2 weeks. And then we can have further discussion and action. So we can move on follow-up on board meeting structure. You all can see in the packet my communication with Joe Guillen, where I relayed the questions from the board. And basically, and he says, a meeting is a meeting is a meeting. It doesn't really matter what you all call it. And he, Miss Lorenzo, I'll just catch you up real quick. We decided that probably the best next steps will be May 19th to give us 2 weeks to look over these strategic plan proposals and be able to ask questions. And then we can have an item on the agenda May 19th with action, which will allow the board to determine what the steps are that the district needs to take. And so then I was quickly moving into follow-up board meeting structure, stating that I had asked NMSBA Executive Director Joe Guillen the questions coming from the board meeting, and his responses are in the document. Can you take action in a work session? Yes, if it's on the agenda. Can you have first reads? Yes, if agenda denotes that you're doing that. Does an agenda for work session need to be as detailed for those as those for regular meetings? His response, yes. Can a board attorney join a work session for policy review and discussion? Yes.
I saw that in the package.
So all of those were the questions. One of the things that I wanted to ask going forward, taking some of the feedback in the last meeting for streamlining our board meeting, our regular board meeting with action items and whatnot. What is the board's opinion on if superintendent and his leadership were able to, as the items come up, be able to create presentations and then just email the board those presentations in advance of work sessions, in advance of the regular meetings, so that the board is able to, look over all of that information prior to walking into this room. And the reason I bring that up as a question to the board now is because the previous board wanted all presentations, all documents presented, every slide presented in the board meetings. And then, there would be discussion and action after those. And the comments now are that we're trying to streamline and make these meetings be more efficient. So what is the board's opinion on getting those presentations, possibly earlier, than just the Friday before the Tuesday work session or the Friday before the Tuesday board meeting? Does this board like the idea of getting those presentations, but then, maybe not having all of the presentations again in, open session or work session, where we would be able to say, Mr. Widener, I saw the graduation presentation you shared with us, the slides, the documents, whatever you shared with us. These are my questions. And then that would be part of the work session or part of, what could be built into an open meeting. I'm just trying to help again.
Now, I mean,
Well, we'd extend the time
yeah,
that we'd have the information. Instead of getting it Friday, we'd get it
As it was ready.
as it was, yeah.
Well, as an example, like on RFP, there was like just a lot of information that goes in one of those. Sometimes it takes us a couple of hours, they wanna know, I don't know.
But I'm asking, do you want, I mean, like tonight, certainly, we needed, without a doubt, the budget presentation. But some of these other items, you know, I'll just use from the last meeting, the DD waiver information. Did that still need to be a presentation to the public? Or was that something that could have been informational to the board? And then if there were follow-up questions, then we could ask those questions in the work session. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Because the previous board wanted both. You know, they wanted all of the documentation, but then they also wanted, you know, all of the presentations. So I'm just asking for the
Yeah,
board
there's
on that one.
presentations that don't need to be exempted, like if we can get that information, go through it and get with Lane with any questions ahead of time, I think that would speed things up.
Well, and historically, like, there was a lot of fluff in the presentation. You know, we did the SEL presentations and we had those people here and we awarded them the belt and that kind of stuff. And so,
Well, but with that too, I don't mind publicly recognizing people when they're doing a good job.
well, and I found in the last few months, it's really, the teachers really
They
are
like to be-
excited to get that awarded in front of their kids.
Right,
You
or
know,
the, or their, or the other
It's
teachers.
excited for their colleagues to see them get that award and talk about. Yeah, yeah. But then like district baseball, we have the district champs in baseball and tennis.
Tennis.
District champs in tennis. And so it's
I think recognition.
pretty
is
neat
good.
when the kids are here and I
Yeah.
mean, because that's why you guys are doing this. You do this for
Right.
kids. And
And
that's why I do this.
it's like Hardy says, they're also being streamlined, so they're seeing. By everybody.
Yeah.
What you gonna do, make your dreams come true?
So I could provide. As you and I plan the agenda, we could say, okay, the staffing report can be just a presentation. I mean, it can be an information presentation. But if we recognize the district tennis champs, that can be a in-person presentation. I mean, we could kind of screen those.
I mean, that's what we're just trying to
Yeah.
make everything a little bit more impactful in a shorter amount of time. Have a,
Mr. Jones hadn't gone 2.5 hours.
I think that was.
It was,
it was fantastic.
it was, and he gave us a lot of detail. And I'm appreciative of that, Mr. Jones.
Me too.
Yep, very much so.
4 pages of notes.
So does that sound reasonable, board? What else, what are your
What
suggestions?
we've been doing.
And you guys would kind of like to keep the meetings at about an hour?
I think an hour and a half is not unreasonable.
Okay. Mrs. Lee and I,
Yeah,
We're-
2 hours.
we were kind of assigning times, and I don't know. if
We
that's
did
what-
not on work session because work session,
But we
you
can
don't,
go back to that and maybe
regular,
one of you will be our time watcher and say, okay, it's been 5 minutes.
The goal.
Well, but asking questions, it's been 5 minutes.
I think the other thing in regards to board meeting structure, right, I think just in the future, like not having things show up on the agenda that wasn't a previous future item. Cause then it's like, wait, what is this? Like, I don't even remember having this discussion, right? So I think like doing that, I also like that we're able to add things on future item agendas. And in my conversation with other board members, the superintendent makes the agenda with input from all the board members. And so it's not just the agenda of, right, particular individuals. And so we also feel like our stuff have priority too, that we're bringing forward from our constituents.
And see, that's why I like the feature of one on here, because.
Board president and the super make the agenda, but we can add anything at any time.
yeah, so
To
it,
the future agenda, onto the future agenda items, but what's actually on the agenda, right? Like for us to be able to have input into that, so it's not just, right, one person's agenda, like that, and that should.
All you do is call Lane or Francie and tell them I would like to get this on the agenda and it'll
Well,
not on the future.
like
item,
right now I
on the
put
agenda.
Yazi Martinez and it might take me 2 weeks to get somebody scheduled, but
But it's there, yeah.
yeah, but it's on there.
Mhm.
It's on there.
And like Donald in here, like I said, like I said, the reason I like the future agenda items is, I might say, hey, Lane, I saw that it's Al on there, can we can we have a workshop on collaborative bargaining agreement, or, like the Mesa View update?
No, I agree, because when I saw that, like, right, when I saw this, yesterday, because I actually had a question around that, because I saw online that the collective bargaining agreement.
And that would,
Okay, so-
that one could be a workshop, like I said, we can say, hey, we got these down here, Francie. Or, well, I usually call her, but they say, hey, this should be on the workshop. Like I said, we have up to, I don't know how many, Z, A to Z. But I mean, it's okay not to have them on there, but it just helps me to say, well, we need what's the question on this one? Can we have a workshop for this? Or you guys can add something to the future agenda, like you said, the Yazi Martinez.
So
For instance, where
typically,
is it?
typically future agenda items is like the queue. It's not, every one of those is gonna 100% be on the next board meeting agenda. Because some of the things, and saying that we can't put something on an agenda because it's not listed as a future agenda item. Our consent agenda today is an illustration of that came up, and Chanda called me on Thursday and said, Francie, we've got to add this because this has to be on and approved in order for it to be expended in the allotted time. So we can't, my opinion is that we can't say that only future agenda items may show up on the next meeting. Because, and again, policy, states that the superintendent and board president work in conjunction, and any board member can put something on the agenda if noticed, I think it's 5 days before the agenda is to be posted. So if we know that agendas are posted on Fridays, by Monday, if you have 10 items you would like to be on the agenda, there's some flexibility to be able to add those. However, the superintendent has the ultimate, decision on how many items can be met in the allotted time. And he might say, those, I can put these 5 items that you just requested on this meeting, but I need time to get those other items on, and they may need to be on the next meeting.
Little like Donald then says, we can have the workshops with
Mhm.
whatever's down here. The workshop will be, let's say we're gonna discuss the Mesa View update or the Manzano renewal or just whatever in there. And like she says, we had the workshop on that. Now we come to our meeting. Now we're gonna, we've already know what's happening there. We'll vote on those. But at the same time, you just had a boiler go down at the high school or at one of the schools.
And we
So
need
then
to buy a
It's
backhoe.
gotta get back in here. So we need a backhoe, or we need a boiler, or we need a bunch of portable air conditioners or heating elements that we gotta come up to get, which is understandable that can come in there. But I can see
We
where
can always
Donovan's
have
getting at.
emergency board meetings if if
You cannot. Emergency board meetings are like harm or extreme circumstances.
special?
You can have special, yeah, yeah.
But what I'm hearing Donna Lynn say is, we know, we see the workshop on here, then we should have it. We should be able to vote on it or whatever.
Yeah, and if there's something that comes up that's not on
It
here,
might squeeze in, something could squeeze in there though. Like she said, we had, what came up on here, this bar.
I think it would just take a little bit more planning, right? Because I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff happening, right? But I mean, we get notice of stuff, like nothing's really true, seeing it, right? So I think it'll just take a little bit more, planning in regards to that. And I know we have to get the bar approved, but that came in April, right? We could have done it last meeting or in 2 meetings. It's a reimbursement. I saw the
It's an-
grant was a reimbursement.
It's an increase to the amount that they're granting.
Yeah.
So for us, we need to get it done as soon as possible because we have to expend and show receipts
By
for all
30.
that. Yeah, mid-June.
To request for reimbursement by July.
Which we already have stuff picked out,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I saw the Linda item and I was like, ooh.
yeah, tomorrow morning, they'll place that order.
No one's ready.
Anything else on that? We can move to consent agenda.
I don't have anything else.
I don't.
I just have one other question, since we are discussing the board meeting structure. I think one of the things that, in regards to what goes on there, and I didn't see anything that like we can add different items on there, right? And I know on the regular board meeting agenda, there's a time for public comment and it's usually like 5 minutes. So, I mean, I think that having an opportunity, for our Pueblos, nations, and tribes to address the board is super important. And not that they would address the board every session, and if that's we just put NA, right? But allowing like a tribal leader to address the board and giving them 2-minute opportunity, that's not, they're not stakeholders, they're not partners, right? They're sovereign nations. So if Governor MLG wanted to address the board, we wouldn't say, hey man, you only have 2 minutes, right? Because we have 5 minutes total. And so I think that allowing for that to happen when necessary and when they request, that we include that in how how board meetings are structured.
And that can happen, but we can't interject with them.
No, yeah, that's fine.
We can listen to them, but we can't comment, that's the only thing
And
is.
that request would just need to go to
And
the
that's perfectly
superintendent's
welcome.
office.
We're always willing to listen, but we can't have a meeting with them.
Yeah, no, I think addressing the board and tribal consultation are totally different. So I think they should
Yeah.
have an opportunity
Yeah.
to address the board as a whole, because not all of us go to consultation, right? Not all of us have, not everybody has a Nation Pueblo tribe in their district. And so for them to be able to address the board in a board meeting, outside of that public comment section.
And
is
again, I
important.
would suggest that they reach out to the superintendent
Okay.
for that.
So there's not an issue with that. Okay.
There is, I believe you guys have a policy that it has to be related to the agenda.
So, but they may request. But it is ultimately the board, or I should say the superintendent's decision whether it goes on that agenda or would need to be another time. Like when we've had,
Well, the mayor wanted to come,
Acoma.
we didn't let him, remember the mayor
I
wanted to come?
do, well,
We
he
did have an
wanted,
issue with the city official that wanted to come to our meetings and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and commissioners, so it opens the door to a lot of people.
so policy, I would say we have to look at what the policy
But the
states,
mayor wanted to
but the
come at one time and-
request would go to the superintendent.
Because they're stakeholders too, the mayor, the commissioner.
Yeah,
the-
and I don't think they're stakeholders, right? They're sovereigns. Yeah,
Anything else on structure? I would just encourage us to look at what the policy states as far as allowing outside
The citizens should address the board.
people able to.
And I guess that's what I'm saying, it's not a citizen addressing the board, it's a sovereign nation addressing the.
It would have to go as a citizen addressing the board, though. There's no special carve out for a sovereign. We just have that citizens to address the board.
Maybe we should, because I think that would address Martinez, so.
All right, anything else on that one? I think we can move to consent, which is consideration of approval of the bar fund code 27902 Indian Education Fund competitive grant. Superintendent.
I would recommend that we approve this bar. This is accepting funds from the Public Education Department, additional funds that we were granted. And so we would have between now and June, the end of June, to get it spent. And so we definitely would like to accept it.
Very good. Board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed? And a second?
Second.
I'm giving it to Ms. Salazar. It has been moved by Mr. Clausen and seconded by Ms. Salazar to approve the consent agenda as listed, including the bar fund code 27902 Indian Education Fund competitive grant. We shall proceed to a roll call vote. Mrs. Turley, please.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mr. Hadamio,
Yes.
Ms. Lorenzo, Ms. Salazar, Ms. Lee.
Aye, the motion carries. And now we have adjournment. Superintendent.
I recommend that we adjourn this meeting, this work session.
All right, board members, ceremony to adjourn this meeting as amended. And a second? It has been moved by Ms. Lorenzo and seconded by Mr. Clausen to adjourn the meeting as amended. Mrs. Turley.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mr. Hadamio,
No.
He did. I understand why.
Ms. Lorenzo,
Yes.
Ms. Salazar, Ms. Lee.
Aye, the motion carries. Board adjourned at 8:38 PM.
And we should agree to disagree. No, it's not a big deal.